Blood sprayed across the white tile floor as the trauma patient lunged forward, his hospital gown soaked crimson. 3 residents stumbled backward. A surgical tray crashed against the wall. The man's eyes were wild, not from pain, but from terror. "They're coming for me," he gasped, clutching a scalpel he'd somehow grabbed. "Armed men, federal contractors, they're already inside." The attending physician, Dr. Marcus Brennan, raised his hands, his voice cracking. "Sir, put down the—" "Everybody step back. Now." The voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Calm. Controlled. Absolute. Every head turned toward the blonde nurse standing at the doorway, her posture unnaturally straight, her eyes locked on the patient with an intensity that made the air feel heavier. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Because at Riverside General Hospital in Portland, Oregon, Nurse Sarah Mitchell was the one person nobody took seriously, until the moment everything fell apart. Before we dive in, I need your help. Stay with me until the very end of this story. If it keeps you hooked, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. Sarah Mitchell moved through the emergency department like a ghost, quiet, precise, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else, which drove the senior staff absolutely insane. She'd been at Riverside General for 18 months, and in that time she'd become the department's favorite punching bag. Too young to know better, too calm under pressure, too confident for someone who just held a nursing degree. "Mitchell, you're not running a battlefield," Dr. Brennan had snapped at her last week during a code blue. "Stop barking orders like you're in charge." She'd said nothing, just stepped back. Let him fumble through the resuscitation while she quietly prepped the defibrillator before he even asked for it. That was the thing about Sarah. She never argued, never defended herself, never explained why she seemed to anticipate emergencies before they happened, or why her hands never shook during the worst traumas. The other nurses whispered about her in the break room. "She's weird," one said, "like military weird. She doesn't talk about her past. Maybe she's hiding something." They weren't wrong, but Sarah had learned a long time ago that some things were better left buried. The morning of October 12th started like any other shift. Sarah clocked in at 6 a.m., tied her hair back, and began her rounds in the ICU. The department was unusually quiet, a red flag for any ER nurse worth their salt. Quiet meant something bad was brewing. By 8:30, the calm shattered. "Trauma incoming," the charge nurse yelled. "GSW to the abdomen, heavy bleeding, ETA, 2 minutes. Sarah was already moving before anyone else processed the words. She grabbed the crash cart, checked the suction equipment, and positioned herself at the trauma bay entrance. The residents scrambled behind her, their movements frantic and uncoordinated. Dr. Brennan rushed in, his white coat flapping behind him. "Mitchell, get the— Already done," Sarah said, gesturing to the prepped IV lines and the blood warmer humming beside the gurney. He shot her an irritated look but said nothing. The ambulance doors burst open. Paramedics wheeled in a man in his 40s, his face gray, his breathing shallow. Blood soaked through the bandages wrapped around his torso. "Patient's name is David Ortega," the lead paramedic said, rattling off vitals. 2 gunshot wounds, suspected internal bleeding, BP dropping fast. Sarah's eyes locked onto the patient's face. Something was off. His injuries were serious, but his expression wasn't pain, it was fear, pure, raw terror. "We need to intubate," Dr. Brennan announced, reaching for the laryngoscope. "Wait," Sarah said. Brennan froze. "Excuse me?" "Look at his breathing pattern. He's hyperventilating, not deteriorating. This isn't shock. This is panic. I don't need a nurse telling me how to read a patient. He's trying to tell us something." Brennan's jaw tightened. "Mitchell, step back or step out." Sarah held her ground for 3 seconds, long enough for the attending to register her defiance, then moved to the side. But her eyes never left the patient. David Ortega's lips were moving, barely, silently. Sarah leaned in, ignoring the disapproving glare from Brennan. "They're here," David whispered, his voice so faint she almost missed it. "Inside the hospital. They came to finish the job." Sarah's blood turned cold. "Who?" she whispered back. "Contractors, armed. They'll kill anyone who gets in their way." Before Sarah could respond, the trauma bay doors slammed open. Two men in dark suits walked in, their expressions flat, their movements calculated. They wore federal badges clipped to their belts, but something about them felt wrong. "We're taking over this patient," the taller one said. His voice had no warmth, no authority, just cold command. Dr. Brennan blinked. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "Federal agents. This man is a protected witness. We're transporting him to a secure facility." "He's not stable enough to move," Sarah said. The man's eyes shifted to her. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or calculation. "We'll handle it from here," he said. Sarah's instincts screamed at her, the way they stood, the way they scanned the room, the way their hands hovered near their waistbands. These weren't federal agents. "No," Sarah said. The room went silent. Dr. Brennan turned to her, his face flushing red. "Mitchell, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "Those aren't feds." The taller man's expression didn't change. "Ma'am, step aside." "Show me your credentials," Sarah said. Slowly. "Mitchell!" Brennan shouted. "Apologize right now or you're done here." But Sarah didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on the two men, her body positioned between them and the patient. The shorter man's hand moved toward his jacket. Sarah's hand shot out, grabbing a metal tray from the surgical cart. "Don't!" The room exploded into chaos. The taller man lunged forward. Sarah sidestepped, slammed the tray into his wrist, and shoved him backward with enough force to send him crashing into a monitor stand. The shorter man pulled a gun. Screams erupted from the nurses. Dr. Brennan stumbled backward, his hands raised. Sarah moved faster than anyone thought possible. She grabbed the man's wrist, twisted it sharply, and drove her elbow into his ribs. The gun clattered to the floor. "Everybody out!" Sarah shouted. "Now!" The staff scrambled for the exits. Sarah grabbed the crash cart and shoved it toward the doorway, creating a makeshift barricade. The taller man was already back on his feet, his face twisted in rage. "You just made a big mistake." "You first," Sarah said. Then the fire alarm blared. Every light in the trauma bay flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the room in red emergency lighting. And from somewhere deep in the hospital, Sarah heard the unmistakable sound of automatic gunfire. The hospital's PA system crackled to life. "Attention all staff. This is a code silver. We are in active lockdown. Do not leave your current location. Do not approach the main entrances." Sarah's mind shifted into combat mode. She'd heard that tone before. She'd lived through that chaos before. Just not in Portland. "Get to the ICU," she barked at the residents frozen in the hallway. "Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in unless you recognize them." "Who the hell do you think you are?" Dr. Brennan shouted. Sarah ignored him. She grabbed the patient's gurney and shoved it toward the service elevator, her movements efficient and precise. David Ortega grabbed her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. "You know what's happening." "Yeah," Sarah said. "I do." "You're military." Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. The service elevator doors opened. Sarah wheeled the patient inside and hit the button for the 4th floor. The old surgical wing that had been closed for renovations. Empty. Defensible. Dr. Brennan tried to follow, but Sarah blocked the doorway. "Stay here," she said. "Get everyone into lockdown and keep them quiet." "You don't give me orders." "I just did." The elevator doors closed on his furious face. Sarah turned to David. "How many?" "At least 6. Maybe more. They've been tracking me for 2 weeks." "Why?" "I testified against Haldron Defense. Illegal arms deals. Bribes. Half the executives are going to prison because of me. They sent a kill team to tie up loose ends." Sarah's jaw tightened. Haldron Defense, she knew that name. Everyone in the military knew that name. They were the contractors who supplied faulty equipment to combat zones, the ones who walked away with billions while soldiers died from defective gear. "They infiltrated hospital staff," David continued. "Someone on the inside helped them get through security." The elevator dinged. 4th floor. Sarah wheeled the gurney into the darkened hallway. The old surgical wing was a maze of abandoned operating rooms and storage closets. Perfect for hiding, perfect for an ambush. She parked the gurney inside a supply room and locked the door. "Stay quiet," she said. "Don't move unless I tell you to." "What are you going to do?" Sarah didn't answer. She grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, tested its weight, and moved back into the hallway. She'd done this before, just not in a hospital. Downstairs, chaos consumed Riverside General. Gunfire echoed through the main lobby. Security guards scrambled for cover. Civilians screamed and ran for the exits, only to find them sealed by the lockdown protocol. The armed men moved through the building with military precision, their faces covered by black masks, their rifles raised. One of them grabbed a nurse by the arm. "Where's the federal witness?" "I don't know," she sobbed. He shoved her aside and kept moving. In the administrative wing, Hospital Director Laura Vance watched the security feeds from her office, her face pale. She reached for her phone, but her hand was shaking too badly to dial. Dr. Marcus Brennan burst through her door. "We need to evacuate. We're in lockdown. No one gets out." "Then call the police. Call SWAT. They're already on the way. How long?" Laura didn't answer. Brennan slammed his fist on her desk. "This is insane. Who the hell are these people?" "I don't know." But that was a lie. Laura Vance knew exactly who they were. She'd known for months, ever since Haldron Defense had offered her $2 million to make sure David Ortega's medical records disappeared. Ever since they'd paid her to look the other way when their contractors walked through her hospital wearing fake badges. She'd thought it would be clean, simple, just paperwork. She hadn't expected them to bring guns. On the fourth floor, Sarah Mitchell crouched in the darkness, her breathing steady, her mind calculating every variable. She heard footsteps, heavy boots, 2 men, maybe 3. They were sweeping the old surgical wing, methodical, professional. Sarah waited. The first man rounded the corner. Sarah swung the fire extinguisher like a baseball bat, connecting with his helmet. He dropped like a stone. The second man raised his rifle. Sarah grabbed the barrel, twisted it upward, and drove her knee into his stomach. The rifle clattered to the floor. She swept his legs out from under him and slammed his head against the wall. Both men unconscious in under 10 seconds. Sarah dragged their bodies into an empty operating room and grabbed one of their radios. Static crackled. Then a voice. "Delta Team, report. Have you located the target?" Sarah pressed the transmit button. "Negative. Still searching the 4th floor." A pause. "Copy that. Echo Team is moving to ICU." Sarah's blood ran cold. The ICU, where the most vulnerable patients were trapped, where Dr. Brennan had sent the residents. She grabbed the rifle from the unconscious contractor, checked the magazine, and moved toward the stairwell. The hospital's PA system crackled again. "Code Silver remains in effect. All personnel remain in lockdown." Sarah pushed through the stairwell door and descended 3 floors in silence. The ICU was located on the 2nd floor, directly above the emergency department. If the contractors reached it, they'd have hostages. Leverage. A bloodbath. Sarah reached the 2nd floor landing and paused. Voices. Shouting. The sound of doors being kicked open. She moved into the hallway. 3 armed men stood at the ICU entrance, their rifles aimed at the sealed doors. "Open it," one of them barked into his radio. "Now!" A voice crackled back. "System's locked. We need the override code." "Then get it." Sarah stepped into the open. "Looking for someone?" All 3 men spun toward her. Sarah raised the rifle. "Drop your weapons." One of them laughed. "You're a nurse." "I'm a lot of things." The man's smile faded. "Who the hell are you?" Sarah didn't answer. She fired a single shot into the ceiling. The sound echoed like thunder. "Next one's not a warning," she said. The 3 men exchanged glances. Then, slowly, they lowered their weapons. "Now kick them toward me." They did. Sarah kept her rifle trained on them. "On your knees, hands behind your heads." They complied. For a moment, the hallway was silent. Then the lead contractor spoke. "You're making a mistake." "Yeah," Sarah said. "I've been told that before." "You don't know who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. Haldron Defense, illegal arms contractors, mercenaries pretending to be professionals." The man's eyes narrowed. "How do you—" The building shook. A deafening roar filled the air, drowning out everything else. Sarah's heart stopped. She knew that sound. Military helicopters. The windows exploded inward as repelling lines dropped from the sky. Black-clad figures descended into the hallway, their movements synchronized, their weapons raised. A voice boomed through a megaphone. Federal Special Operations. Everyone on the ground, now! The contractors hit the floor. Sarah lowered her rifle. The lead operator approached her, his face obscured by a tactical helmet. He stopped 3 feet away, scanned her face, and froze. Commander Mitchell? The hallway went silent. Every head turned towards Sarah. The operator removed his helmet. Sarah's breath caught. Captain Reyes? Reyes stared at her in disbelief. Ma'am, what are you doing here? Working? Working as a nurse? Long story. Reyes turned to his team. Secure the building. No casualties. No collateral damage. This is a federal operation. The team moved with brutal efficiency, sweeping through the hospital, rounding up the remaining contractors, and establishing a perimeter around Riverside General. Within minutes, the entire building was locked down. Dr. Marcus Brennan emerged from the administrative office, his face pale, his hands shaking. He stared at Sarah, then at the armed soldiers surrounding her. What is happening? He whispered. Sarah met his eyes. You're about to find out. A woman in a dark suit stepped forward, her badge gleaming under the emergency lights. FBI. David Ortega is a federal witness under protective custody, she said. This hospital was compromised. We've been tracking a kill team for 3 days. A kill team? Brennan stammered. In my hospital? Your hospital was paid to hide evidence, the agent said coldly. Medical records were altered, security footage was erased. Someone on your staff took money from Haldron Defense. Brennan's face went white. That's impossible. Is it? The agent turned to her team. Bring her in. 2 agents escorted Laura Vance into the hallway, her hands cuffed behind her back, her face streaked with tears. I didn't know they'd bring guns, she sobbed. I swear I didn't know. Save it for the prosecutor, the agent said. Brennan stared at Laura in shock. You? Laura didn't answer. The agent turned to Sarah. You saved a federal witness tonight. You also saved this entire hospital from becoming a massacre. We're going to need a full statement. Sarah nodded. Captain Reyes stepped closer, his voice low. Commander, we thought you were dead. After the operation in Kandahar, I retired, Sarah said quietly. Retired? Reyes looked at her in disbelief. Ma'am, you were decorated. You saved 30 soldiers under enemy fire. I know what I did. Reyes fell silent. Sarah turned away, her shoulders tense. Dr. Brennan was still staring at her, his mouth hanging open. Commander? Sarah didn't look at him. It's just Sarah. But you're a nurse. I'm a lot of things, Dr. Brennan. The federal agent stepped forward again. Miss Mitchell, we're going to need you to come with us. There's going to be a full investigation, congressional hearings, media coverage. This is going to be national news. Sarah's jaw tightened. I didn't do this for recognition. I know, but you're getting it anyway. Well, by dawn, Riverside General Hospital was surrounded by news vans, federal vehicles, and armed personnel. The entire building had been evacuated. Patients were transferred to neighboring hospitals under heavy guard. Inside the main lobby, Dr. Marcus Brennan sat on a bench, his head in his hands. He'd spent 18 months mocking Sarah Mitchell, dismissing her, belittling her in front of the entire staff, and she'd just saved his life. A young resident approached him, her voice shaking. Dr. Brennan, they're saying Sarah was in the military, that she was a commander. Is that true? Brennan didn't answer, because he didn't know. None of them knew. They'd been so focused on putting her in her place that they never bothered to ask where she came from. Outside, Sarah stood alone on the hospital's front steps, her scrub still stained with blood, her arms crossed tightly against the cold morning air. Captain Reyes joined her. The FBI wants to debrief you, so does the DOD. Hell, the president might want to shake your hand. Sarah said nothing. You saved a lot of lives tonight, Commander. I'm not a commander anymore. You'll always be a commander. Sarah turned to face him. I left that life behind, Reyes. I didn't want this. Then why'd you do it? Sarah looked back at the hospital. Because no one else could. Reyes was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, What are you going to do now? Sarah didn't answer, because she didn't know. All she knew was that the life she'd built in Portland, the quiet, anonymous life where no one knew her past, was gone. And the fallout was just beginning. The FBI interrogation room smelled like stale coffee and fluorescent lights. Sarah sat across from two agents, her hands folded on the metal table, her expression unreadable. "Let's start from the beginning," Agent Torres said, clicking her pen. "When did you first suspect the hospital was compromised?" "The moment those two walked into the trauma bay." "The fake federal agents?" "They moved wrong, stood wrong. Their badges were clipped too high." Agent Torres exchanged a glance with her partner. "Most people wouldn't notice that." "I'm not most people." "Clearly." Torres leaned forward. "Commander Mitchell, your military record is sealed. We had to go through 3 levels of clearance just to confirm your identity. Why?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "That's classified." "Not anymore. David Ortega is alive because of you. Haldron Defense is facing federal charges. This is going public whether you like it or not. Then unseal the files yourself." Torres studied her for a long moment. "You don't want recognition." "I want to go home." "Your home is a crime scene. The contractors had your address, your car, your entire work schedule. Someone gave them everything." Sarah's blood went cold. "Who?" "We're still investigating, but whoever it was had access to hospital personnel files, which means they're either staff or administration." Sarah's mind raced through the possibilities. Laura Vance was already in custody, but she wasn't smart enough to orchestrate this alone. Someone else had been feeding information to Haldron Defense, someone who knew Sarah's schedule down to the minute. "How long do I need to stay here?" "Until we're confident the threat is neutralized." "That could take weeks." "Or months." Torres closed her folder. "Commander, you're a key witness in a federal corruption case worth billions of dollars. Haldron Defense has ties to organized crime, foreign governments, and half the defense industry. They're not going to let this go." Sarah stood. "Then I'll deal with it myself." "That's not how this works." "It is now." Torres rose, her voice sharp. "Sit down, Commander. That's not a request." Sarah met her eyes. "I stopped taking orders when I retired." "You can't just walk out of here. Watch me." Sarah moved toward the door. Agent Torres stepped in front of her, but Sarah didn't slow down. She sidestepped smoothly, reached for the handle, and pulled it open. Captain Reyes stood in the hallway, his arms crossed. "Commander, we need to talk." "Not now." "It's about Dr. Brennan." Sarah paused. "What about him?" "He's holding a press conference in 2 hours. He's planning to take credit for the response." Sarah's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered in her eyes. "Let him." "You don't care?" "I care about going home." Reyes stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Commander, the media is going to crucify you if you stay silent. Brennan's already spinning this as his leadership under fire. He's calling you a rogue employee who disobeyed direct orders." Sarah's hands curled into fists. "He what?" "He's covering his ass. If you don't set the record straight, he's going to bury you. Then I'll correct him in person." Reyes smiled grimly. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." Shots. Riverside General Hospital looked like a war zone. Yellow crime scene tape surrounded the building. News crews camped outside the barricades. Protesters held signs demanding answers. Families of patients stood in clusters, some crying, some shouting at reporters. Inside the hospital's main conference room, Dr. Marcus Brennan adjusted his tie and cleared his throat. 20 journalists packed the space, their cameras aimed at the podium, their recorders ready. Brennan stepped forward, his expression carefully composed, somber, authoritative, the face of a man who'd weathered a crisis and emerged victorious. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "Last night, Riverside General Hospital faced an unprecedented attack. Armed contractors infiltrated our facility with the intent to harm a patient under our care. I want to assure the public that our emergency protocols functioned exactly as designed." A reporter raised her hand. "Dr. Brennan, witnesses say a nurse single-handedly fought off multiple attackers. Can you confirm that?" Brennan's smile tightened. "Our entire staff responded with incredible bravery. Nurses, doctors, security. Everyone played a role in protecting our patients. But specifically, Nurse Sarah Mitchell. Miss Mitchell acted outside the scope of her training," Brennan interrupted. "While her intentions were commendable, her actions created unnecessary risk. Proper protocol would have been to evacuate and defer to security personnel." Another reporter spoke up. "But security was compromised. Mitchell is the one who identified the fake federal agents." That's still under investigation. And she's former military, correct? A decorated commander? Brennan's jaw tightened. I'm not at liberty to discuss personnel files. So you knew about her background. We conduct thorough background checks on all employees. Then why was she working as a floor nurse instead of in a leadership position? Brennan's expression hardened. Next question. The door at the back of the conference room opened. Sarah Mitchell walked in. The room went silent. She was still wearing her blood-stained scrubs. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her face was pale, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion, but her posture was military straight. Every camera in the room turned toward her. Brennan's face drained of color. Miss Mitchell, this is a closed press conference. No, it's not. Sarah's voice cut through the room like a whip. You invited the media. That makes it public. A reporter thrust a microphone toward her. Miss Mitchell, is it true you served in the military? Yes. What was your rank? Lieutenant Commander, Medical Evacuation Specialist. How many years? 12. The questions came faster now, overlapping, frantic. Why didn't the hospital know? Did you save the witness? Are you a hero? Sarah held up a hand. The room quieted. I'm not a hero, she said. I did my job. That's all. But Dr. Brennan just said you acted outside protocol. Dr. Brennan suspended me 6 hours before the attack. Sarah's eyes locked onto Brennan. He told me I was overdramatic, that I didn't belong in his hospital, that I should turn in my badge and leave. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Brennan stepped forward, his face flushed. That's taken completely out of context. Is it? Sarah's voice was dangerously calm. You suspended me because I questioned your judgment. You humiliated me in front of the staff. You told me I was just a nurse. I never said... You said it last week in the trauma bay, in front of 3 residents and 2 attending physicians. Sarah took a step forward. You told me to stop pretending I was in charge, that I didn't have the authority to make decisions. Brennan opened his mouth, then closed it. Sarah continued. Last night, when armed contractors entered your hospital, you locked yourself in an office. When patients needed protection, you hid. When the ICU was under siege, you did nothing. That's not fair. Fair? Sarah's voice rose for the first time. You spent 18 months undermining me, mocking me, making sure everyone knew I was beneath you. And when everything fell apart, I'm the one who kept your patients alive. The room was completely silent. A reporter broke the tension. Dr. Brennan, is this true? Brennan's face was scarlet. This is highly inappropriate. Answer the question, another journalist demanded. Brennan looked around the room, realizing he'd lost control of the narrative. I made decisions based on hospital protocol. You made decisions based on ego, Sarah said, and people almost died because of it. Brennan's hands were shaking. You had no right to disobey my orders. Your orders would have gotten everyone killed. You're not a doctor. No, Sarah said quietly. I'm the person who saved your life. The room exploded again. Reporters shouted over each other. Cameras pushed forward. Security guards moved toward the podium. Sarah turned and walked out. Tusk. The hospital parking lot was chaos. News vans blocked the exits. Reporters chased after Sarah, shouting questions, thrusting microphones in her face. Commander Mitchell, wait! Will you testify against Haldren Defense? Are you suing the hospital? Sarah kept walking, her expression blank, her movements automatic. A hand grabbed her arm. Sarah spun, her fist already cocked. Captain Reyes raised his hands. Easy, Commander. Sarah lowered her arm, her breathing hard. Don't sneak up on me. Noted. Reyes gestured toward a black SUV parked at the edge of the lot. Get in. We need to talk. I'm done talking. This isn't optional. Sarah studied his face, then nodded. They climbed into the vehicle. Reyes pulled out of the lot, cutting through side streets to avoid the media circus. That was quite a performance, Reyes said after a moment. That wasn't a performance. You just torched Brennan's career on live television. He torched it himself. Reyes was quiet for a moment. You know this is going to get worse before it gets better. I know. Haldren Defense has deep pockets. They'll come after you, legally, financially, maybe physically. Let them try. Reyes glanced at her. You're not the same person you were in Kandahar. No one is. What happened over there, Commander? Why'd you really leave? Sarah stared out the window. That's classified. Everything about you is classified. Your service record, your deployments, even your discharge paperwork is redacted. I pulled every string I had, and I still can't find out why you left. Then maybe you should stop looking. I can't, because right now you're the most valuable witness in a federal corruption case, and I have no idea if you're a flight risk, a security threat, or what. Reyes pulled the SUV over to the side of the road and turned to face her. Or if you're going to get yourself killed trying to finish this alone. Sarah met his eyes. I've been alone for 3 years, Reyes. I'm not asking for backup now. You don't have a choice. The FBI is putting you in protective custody. No. Commander, I said no. Sarah reached for the door handle. Reyes hit the locks. Listen to me. Cauldron Defense has already put a bounty on your head. $500,000 to anyone who takes you out before the trial. You can't just walk away from that. I've survived worse. In a combat zone with a team backing you up. This is different. You're alone. You're exposed. And you have no idea who you can trust. Sarah's jaw tightened. I trust myself. That's not enough. It's all I've got. Reyes exhaled slowly. Why are you so determined to do this alone? Sarah didn't answer. Is it because of what happened in Kandahar? Sarah's hands curled into fists. Stop. I know something went wrong over there. I know you lost your entire team. I said stop. Commander, you can't keep running from... Sarah's fist slammed into the dashboard. I'm not running. I left because I had to, because staying would have killed me. And now you want me to go back into that life? To play the hero again? To smile for cameras and shake hands with politicians who don't give a damn about what really happened? Reyes stared at her. What did happen? Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. We were evacuating wounded soldiers from a forward operating base. 30 men, all critical. The intel said the route was clear. It wasn't. We drove straight into an ambush, IEDs, rocket fire, sniper positions on every ridge. She paused, her breathing uneven. I got 27 out, 3 didn't make it, and when we finally reached the base, command told me it was acceptable losses, that we'd achieved the mission objective. Sarah's voice turned bitter. 3 men died because someone gave us bad intel, and it was acceptable. Reyes was silent. So I left, Sarah continued. I walked away from the medals and the commendations and the press conferences because I couldn't stand in front of another camera and pretend like losing people was acceptable. But you saved 27. I lost 3. That's not the same thing. It is to me. Reyes unlocked the doors. Where will you go? Somewhere quiet. There's no such thing. Not anymore. Sarah opened the door and stepped out. Then I'll make one. She walked away without looking back. The motel was the kind of place where no one asked questions. Cash only. No security cameras, a single exit, and a clear view of the parking lot. Sarah locked the door behind her, wedged a chair under the handle, and collapsed onto the bed. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it for a long moment, then answered. Yeah. Commander Mitchell? A man's voice, smooth, professional, dangerous. Who's asking? Someone who wants to make you an offer. Sarah sat up slowly. I'm listening. Cauldron Defense is willing to pay you $5 million to disappear. New identity, new life, anywhere in the world. And all I have to do is forget what I saw. Exactly. Sarah laughed. It was a cold, humorless sound. You think I'm that easy? Everyone has a price. Mine's higher than you can afford. 10 million, Sarah paused. You're serious? Very. Think about it, Commander. You could live the rest of your life in peace. No trials, no media, no threats. Just walk away and let them get away with murder. They're going to get away with it anyway. You know how these things work. Lawyers, appeals, plea deals. Even if they go to trial, half of them will walk. Not if I testify. Then you'll spend the next 5 years looking over your shoulder. Is that really the life you want? Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. I've been looking over my shoulder for 3 years. What's another 5? You're making a mistake. I've made worse. She hung up. For a moment, the room was silent. Then her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text message. No number, just a photo. Sarah's heart stopped. The photo showed her apartment. Her door, kicked open, furniture overturned, walls spray-painted with a single word, next. Sarah stared at the image, her mind racing. They knew where she lived. They'd already been inside. They were watching her right now. She grabbed her bag, shoved her few belongings inside, and moved toward the door. A knock. Sarah froze. Housekeeping? A woman's voice called. Sarah didn't move. Housekeeping didn't come at midnight. She backed toward the bathroom window, her hand reaching for the cheap lock. The door exploded inward. 3 men rushed in, masks covering their faces, weapons raised. Sarah threw herself through the bathroom window. Glass shattered around her. She hit the pavement hard, rolled, and came up running. Gunfire erupted behind her. Sarah sprinted across the parking lot, ducking between cars, her lungs burning. She could hear footsteps pounding after her, shouts in the darkness. She reached the main road and flagged down a passing truck. The driver slammed on the brakes. "Lady, are you—" "Drive!" Sarah shouted, yanking open the passenger door. The driver saw the men with guns and floored it. Sarah collapsed into the seat, her hands shaking, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "What the hell was that?" the driver stammered. Sarah didn't answer. She was staring at her phone. Another text message. This one showed a photo of Captain Reyes, unconscious, tied to a chair, blood streaming down his face. Below the image, a single line of text. "You have 24 hours. Come alone, or he dies." Sarah stared at the photo until the screen blurred. Reyes. Bloodied. Bound. The timestamp showed 30 minutes ago. The truck driver glanced at her nervously. "Lady, you need a hospital?" "No?" Sarah's voice was flat, dead. "Pull over at the next gas station." "You sure? You look—" "Pull over." He did. Sarah climbed out without a word, leaving a smear of blood on the door handle from where glass had cut her palm. The truck drove off quickly, the driver probably already dialing 911. Sarah walked into the gas station's fluorescent glare. The clerk behind the counter looked up from his phone, started to say something, then saw her face and went quiet. She moved past the aisles to the payphone mounted on the back wall. Nobody used them anymore. That made them perfect. She dialed from memory. The line clicked twice, then a computerized voice. "You have reached a disconnected number." Sarah hung up and dialed again, this time reversing the last 4 digits. The phone rang once. "Mitchell?" Agent Torres's voice was sharp, alert. "Where are you?" "They have Reyes." A pause. "We know. His detail was ambushed 20 minutes ago. 2 agents dead. Where are you?" "They want me to come alone." "That's not happening. It has to. Commander, listen to me very carefully. This is a trap. They don't want to trade. They want to kill both of you and eliminate the 2 biggest threats to their operation." "I know." "Then why are you even considering—" "Because he came for me," Sarah said. "He pulled strings to find me. He tried to help. And now he's going to die because I dragged him into this." "That's not on you." "Yes, it is." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "Everything I touch turns to blood, Torres. Kandahar, the hospital, now Reyes. I'm not letting another person die because of me. So you'll die instead? If that's what it takes." Torres exhaled slowly. "Where's the exchange?" Sarah looked at her phone again. A second message had arrived with an address. "Old Industrial District, warehouse on Pier 47. That's abandoned territory. No cameras, no witnesses. They picked it for a reason." "I know." "Then you know I can't let you do this. You don't have a choice." Sarah hung up. She walked out of the gas station and into the night. Her body ached. Her hands were shaking. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear, to let someone else handle this. But she'd tried that 3 years ago, and it hadn't worked. The warehouse district smelled like rust and seawater. Broken windows stared down from buildings that had been gutted decades ago. Graffiti covered every surface. Needles and broken glass littered the ground. Sarah approached on foot, staying in the shadows, her eyes scanning for movement. She'd ditched her phone 2 blocks back. They'd be tracking it. She'd stolen a jacket from a homeless man's shopping cart and pulled the hood low over her face. Pier 47 sat at the end of a long access road. The warehouse was 3 stories of corrugated metal and shattered dreams. A single light burned in a third-floor window. Sarah counted exits, 5 that she could see. Probably more she couldn't. She checked her watch. 22 hours since the message. She was early. That might keep them off balance. Or it might get Reyes killed. She moved toward the main entrance, a rusted loading bay door that hung half open. Inside, the darkness was absolute. She waited for her eyes to adjust, counting her breaths, forcing her heart rate down. "Commander Mitchell," the voice echoed from somewhere above. Male, calm. "Right on time." Sarah didn't respond. "Alone, I hope. We're watching every approach. If we see federal agents, Captain Reyes dies." "I'm alone." "Smart. Come up to the 3rd floor, slowly." Sarah moved through the darkness, her footsteps echoing on metal stairs. Each step was calculated, each breath controlled. She was walking into an execution, and everyone in this building knew it. The 3rd floor opened into a vast, empty space. Moonlight streamed through broken windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Captain Reyes knelt in the center of the room, his hands zip-tied behind his back, his face swollen and bloody. 2 armed men flanked him, their rifles pointed at his head. A 3rd man stood 20 feet away, his hands in his pockets, his expression relaxed. He was older, late 50s, with gray hair and a tailored suit that looked wrong in this place. "Commander Mitchell," he said pleasantly. "Thank you for coming." Sarah's eyes never left Reyes. "Let him go." "In a moment. First, we need to discuss terms." "There are no terms. You let him go, or I go public with everything I know about Haldron Defense." The man smiled. "You already did that. It didn't work out so well for you." "I'm still breathing. For now." He took a step forward. "My name is Robert Harrington. I'm Chief Operating Officer of Haldron Defense. I'm also the man who authorized the payment to Laura Vance, the man who ordered the hit on David Ortega, the man who's been cleaning up our company's mistakes for the past 15 years. Then you're the man going to prison." "No," Harrington said. "I'm the man who's about to make you disappear." Sarah's jaw tightened. "You tried that already. It didn't take. That was a test. This is the real thing." Harrington gestured to one of his men. "Do you know how easy it is to vanish someone in this country? Especially someone with a classified military background. Someone whose files are already redacted. Someone who technically doesn't exist." "The FBI knows I'm here." "No, they don't. You ditched your phone. You came alone. You're off the grid." Harrington smiled. "By tomorrow morning, you'll be listed as a fugitive, a rogue operator who couldn't handle civilian life. Someone who snapped under pressure and killed a federal agent." Sarah glanced at Reyes. His eyes met hers. He shook his head slightly. "Don't do it," his expression said. "You're going to frame me. We already have. Your apartment was filled with evidence. Illegal weapons, stolen files, a manifesto ranting about government corruption." Harrington shrugged. "The media will eat it up. Disturbed veteran goes on killing spree. Tragic, really. No one's going to believe that. They'll believe what we tell them to believe. We own the narrative, Commander. We always have." Sarah took a step forward. One of the gunmen shifted his rifle toward her. "Here's what's going to happen," Harrington continued. "You're going to confess to orchestrating the hospital attack. You're going to admit you were working with criminal elements to discredit our company. You're going to record a full statement, and then you're going to walk out of here and disappear forever. And if I refuse?" Harrington nodded to one of his men. The gunman pressed his rifle against the back of Reyes's head. "Then he dies. Right now. Right in front of you." Sarah's hands curled into fists. "You kill him. You lose your leverage." "But you lose a friend, and you've already lost so many, haven't you? 3 soldiers in Kandahar. How many friends at the hospital? How long before everyone around you ends up dead?" Sarah's breathing quickened. The words hit like physical blows, because they were true. Everyone she tried to protect ended up bleeding. "Commander, look at me." Reyes's voice was rough, painful. "Don't do this." "Shut up," one of the gunmen snapped, driving the rifle butt into Reyes's shoulder. Reyes grunted but didn't break eye contact with Sarah. "Walk away. Let them kill me. Finish this. I'm not leaving you." "You have to. I won't." "Commander, that's an order." You don't outrank me anymore. Harrington watched this exchange with amusement. Touching, but ultimately pointless. He pulled a phone from his pocket. You have 60 seconds to decide. Confess or watch him die. Sarah looked around the room. 2 gunmen on Reyes. Harrington standing 20 feet away, unarmed. 5 exits, all probably covered. 3 stories up, no easy escape. She ran the numbers, the odds, the outcomes. They were all bad. 30 seconds. Sarah's mind raced. She'd survived worse odds. Kandahar, the hospital. But those times she'd had options. Backup, a plan. This time she had nothing. 15 seconds. Sarah met Harrington's eyes. You win. Harrington smiled. I always do. Now get on your knees. Sarah knelt slowly, her hands raised. One of the gunmen moved toward her with zip ties. And Sarah exploded. She grabbed the gunman's rifle, twisted it upward, and drove her elbow into his throat. The rifle discharged into the ceiling. Sarah ripped it from his hands, spun, and fired 3 rounds at the second gunman. He dropped. Reyes threw himself sideways, rolling toward cover behind a concrete pillar. Sarah charged Harrington. He pulled a pistol from his jacket, but Sarah was faster. She slammed into him, sending them both crashing to the floor. The pistol skittered away. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. More men, lots of them. Sarah grabbed Harrington by the collar and dragged him to his feet, using him as a shield. Call them off. You just killed yourself, Harrington gasped. I've been dead before. It didn't stick. 4 more armed men burst through the doorway. Sarah pressed the rifle barrel against Harrington's temple. Back off, or he dies. The men hesitated. She's bluffing, Harrington said. She won't. Sarah fired a round past his ear. The gunshot echoed like thunder. Next one's not a warning, Sarah said. The men lowered their weapons slightly. Sarah backed toward the window, dragging Harrington with her. Reyes was struggling to his feet, his hands still bound. Commander, behind you! Sarah spun. A 6th man appeared from a side room, his rifle already raised. Sarah shoved Harrington toward him and dove. The rifle cracked. Once, twice. Pain exploded in Sarah's left shoulder. She hit the ground hard, rolled, came up firing. The gunman went down. Sarah's vision swam. Blood soaked through her jacket, hot and sticky. She pressed her hand against the wound, trying to slow the bleeding. Harrington scrambled toward his dropped pistol. Sarah raised her rifle. Empty. Harrington grabbed the pistol, turned, and aimed. The world moved in slow motion. Sarah saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw the barrel pointed at her chest, saw the cold calculation in his eyes. Then the window behind Harrington exploded. A black rope dropped from above. A figure in full tactical gear rappelled through the shattered glass, boots first, moving like liquid shadow. The figure landed between Sarah and Harrington. One hand grabbed Harrington's wrist, twisting it brutally. The pistol fired into the floor. The figure's other hand drove an elbow into Harrington's face. Harrington dropped like a sack of concrete. More ropes descended. More tactical operators poured through windows, through doorways, through holes in the ceiling Sarah hadn't even known existed. The remaining gunmen threw down their weapons. The lead operator removed his helmet. Agent Torres. Sarah blinked. You were FBI. I'm a lot of things. Torres knelt beside her, her expression hard. You're hit. I noticed. That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen anyone do. I've done stupider. Torres pulled out a trauma kit and pressed gauze against Sarah's shoulder. The pressure sent white-hot pain through her entire body. You came, Sarah managed. You think I was going to let you walk into a trap alone? Torres shook her head. I had teams surrounding this place before you even ditched your phone. We've been watching every move. Reyes? Safe. Already extracted. Torres looked at her closely. You knew we were here. I hoped. That's not a plan, Commander. It's all I had. More federal agents flooded the room. Harrington was dragged to his feet, his face bloody, his expensive suit ruined. His eyes found Sarah's. This isn't over, he said. Yeah, Sarah said. It is. Torres stood, barking orders to her team. Medics appeared, working on Sarah's shoulder, asking her questions she barely heard. The pain was spreading now, radiating through her entire body. Shock was setting in. One of the medics shone a light in her eyes. Commander Mitchell, stay with me. Can you hear me? Sarah nodded weakly. We need to get you to a hospital. You've lost a lot of blood. No hospitals, Sarah mumbled. Commander, you're going into shock. No hospitals. Torres leaned over her. Mitchell, you need surgery. That bullet is still lodged in your shoulder. Don't care. Commander. Every hospital I go to, people die. Sarah's vision was fading. Not doing that again. You're being irrational. Probably. Torres cursed under her breath. Get her to the medical unit. Full surgical team. Do it now. The medics lifted Sarah onto a stretcher. The world tilted sideways. Voices echoed strangely. Light streaked across her vision. As they carried her toward the exit, Sarah caught a glimpse of Harrington being shoved into a federal vehicle. He was still talking, still making threats, still thinking he could buy his way out of this. He was wrong. They all were. Because Sarah Mitchell wasn't just a nurse anymore. She wasn't just a commander. She was a witness, a survivor, a woman who'd spent 3 years running from her past, and she was done running. The federal medical facility looked nothing like a hospital. No patients, no visitors, just armed guards and classified wings and rooms that didn't appear on any blueprint. Sarah woke to white walls and the steady beep of monitors. Her left shoulder was wrapped in bandages, her arm immobilized in a sling. An IV dripped clear fluid into her right arm. Agent Torres sat in a chair beside the bed, reading a file. How long? Sarah's voice was hoarse. Torres looked up. 14 hours. The surgery went well, no permanent damage. Reyes? Concussion, broken ribs, but alive. He's down the hall. Sarah tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her shoulder. Don't, Torres said. You'll tear the stitches. Sarah settled back against the pillows. What happened with Harrington? Singing like a canary. He gave us everything. Names, dates, bank accounts, shipments. Haldron Defense's entire operation is imploding as we speak. The others? 16 arrests so far, more coming. Every contractor involved in the hospital attack is in custody. Every executive who signed off on the corruption. Every politician who took their money. Torres closed her file. You did it, Commander. You took down the whole network. Sarah didn't feel victorious. She felt tired, hollow. Like she'd spent the last 3 years holding her breath and only now realized she could exhale. What about Dr. Brennan? She asked. Torres's expression darkened. He resigned, effective immediately. That's it? He just walks away? The hospital board is conducting an internal investigation. Criminal charges are pending. But yes, for now, he walks. Sarah's jaw tightened. That's not justice. No, Torres agreed. It's politics. The door opened. Captain Reyes limped in, his face still bruised, his movement stiff. Commander, he said. Sarah almost smiled. Captain. Reyes pulled up a chair, wincing as he sat. You should have let them kill me. Probably. Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble. That's not how I operate. Reyes was quiet for a moment. Thank you. Sarah nodded. Torres says you're a national hero now. Press is calling you the most decorated medic of the decade. Congress wants to give you a medal. I don't want a medal. I know. Reyes leaned forward. But you're going to get one anyway. And a lot more attention. This is going to follow you for the rest of your life. I know. So what are you going to do about it? Sarah stared at the ceiling. I have no idea. Torres stood. Well, you have time to figure it out. The trial's in 6 months. Until then, you're under protective custody. For 6 months? Haldron Defense still has assets, people loyal to Harrington. They're going to come after you. Let them. Commander, I'm not hiding anymore, Sarah said. I'm done running. I'm done pretending I'm someone I'm not. If they want to come after me, they know where to find me. Torres exchanged a glance with Reyes. That's not how protective custody works. Then I'll decline. You can't just, watch me. Torres threw up her hands. Fine. Get yourself killed. See if I care. She stalked out of the room. Reyes chuckled, then winced. You know she's right. Yeah. You're going to do it anyway. Yeah. You're impossible. I've been told. Reyes stood carefully. For what it's worth, Commander, I'm glad you're back. The world needs more people like you. Sarah didn't respond, because she wasn't sure the world needed people like her. People who left wreckage everywhere they went. People who couldn't save everyone no matter how hard they tried. But maybe Reyes was right. Maybe the world needed people willing to try anyway. 3 days later, Sarah walked out of the federal facility against medical advice. Her shoulder throbbed. Her arm hung useless in the sling, but she was upright, mobile, free. A crowd of reporters waited at the gates. Sarah stopped. This was it. The moment she could walk away, change her name, disappear, become someone else. Or she could face them, face the cameras and the questions and the attention she'd spent 3 years avoiding, face the person she used to be. Torres appeared beside her. Last chance to run. I'm done running. Then what are you going to do? Sarah looked at the crowd, at the cameras, at the journalists shouting her name. She thought about the nurses at Riverside General who'd whispered about her, about Dr. Brennan who'd humiliated her, about Harrington who'd tried to bury her. She thought about the 3 soldiers who died in Kandahar, about the 27 she saved, about Captain Reyes bleeding in a warehouse, about David Ortega fighting for his life in a hospital that should have protected him. She thought about every person she'd failed, every person she'd saved, every choice that brought her to this moment. Then she walked forward. The reporters surged toward her, microphones thrust forward, questions overlapping. Commander Mitchell, how do you feel? Will you testify against Haldren Defense? Are you going back to the military? Sarah stopped at the microphone stand someone had set up. The crowd quieted. My name is Sarah Mitchell, she said. Her voice was steady, clear. 3 years ago, I left the military because I couldn't save everyone. I thought if I walked away, if I became someone else, I could escape that failure. She paused. I was wrong. Because the moment you stop trying is the moment you lose. And I'm not ready to lose. The crowd erupted with more questions. Sarah raised her hand. I'm not a hero. I'm not a symbol. I'm just someone who refused to look away when things got hard. And I'm asking you to do the same. Hold your leaders accountable. Demand transparency. Protect the vulnerable. Because if we don't, people like Harrington win. She stepped away from the microphone. Torres caught her arm. That was quite a speech. It needed to be said. What now? Sarah looked back at the federal facility, then at the city skyline beyond. Now I go back to work. As a nurse? As whatever I need to be. Torres smiled slightly. You're really not going to accept protective custody, are you? No? Then I guess I'll just have to follow you around and make sure you don't get killed. Sounds exhausting. It will be. They walked toward the parking lot together. Sarah's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, expecting another death threat or media request. Instead, it was a message from an unknown number. Riverside General would like to offer you the position of Emergency Department Director. Full authority. Full support. No interference. If you're interested, call this number. Sarah stared at the message. Torres glanced over her shoulder. What is it? A job offer. From who? The hospital that fired me. Torres laughed. Are you going to take it? Sarah looked at the message again. Director. Full authority. Everything she'd never wanted, everything she might need. I don't know, she said honestly. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This one with no words, just a photo. Dr. Marcus Brennan, sitting in what looked like a police interrogation room, his hands cuffed, his face pale. Below the image, a single line. He's not done yet. Neither are we. Sarah stared at the photo until Torres leaned over her shoulder. Who sent that? Torres asked. I don't know. Let me see. Sarah handed her the phone. Torres studied the image, her expression hardening. That's Metro Police Headquarters. Brennan was brought in this morning for questioning. About what? Hospital fraud, insurance kickbacks, falsified medical records. Torres zoomed in on the image. But this photo wasn't taken by anyone on our team. Someone else is watching him. Haldren Defense? Possibly. Or someone trying to send you a message. Torres handed the phone back. Either way, you need to be careful. This isn't over. Sarah pocketed the phone. It never is. They reached Torres's vehicle. Sarah climbed into the passenger seat, her shoulders screaming in protest. She'd refused the pain medication the doctors had offered. She needed to think clearly. Torres started the engine. Where to? Riverside General. You're actually considering their offer? I'm considering hearing them out. Torres pulled onto the highway. You know, Brennan still has allies there, people who covered for him, people who probably took money from Haldron Defense. That's why I need to go back. Commander, you just got shot. You should be recovering, not walking into another war zone. Sarah looked out the window. The war zone follows me. Might as well pick the battlefield. Riverside General looked different in daylight. The crime scene tape was gone. The news vans had moved on to fresher disasters. Patients walked through the main entrance like nothing had happened, but Sarah could still see it. The blood on the floor, the shattered windows, the bodies in the hallway. She climbed out of Torres's vehicle, her legs unsteady. Want me to come in with you? Torres asked. No, this is something I need to do alone. Torres nodded. Call me if anything feels wrong. Sarah walked through the main entrance. Staff members stopped mid-conversation when they saw her. Some stared, some whispered. A few looked away quickly. A young nurse approached, her eyes wide. Commander Mitchell? I'm Jessica. I was on shift that night. You saved my life. Sarah didn't know what to say to that. You okay? Nightmares? Therapy twice a week, but alive. Jessica's voice dropped. Thank you. Sarah nodded stiffly and moved toward the elevators. More eyes followed her, more whispers. The administrative wing was on the 5th floor. Sarah stepped off the elevator and found herself facing a receptionist who looked terrified. Commander Mitchell, they're expecting you. Conference room B. Sarah followed the signs down a carpeted hallway. The conference room door was open. Inside, 3 people sat around a polished table. Sarah recognized one immediately. Dr. Helen Vasquez, Chief of Surgery. In her 60s, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for not suffering fools. She'd been at Riverside for 30 years. The other 2 were strangers. A man in an expensive suit, probably a lawyer, and a woman with steel-gray hair who radiated authority. Commander Mitchell, the woman said, standing. I'm Margaret Hayes, Interim Hospital Director. Thank you for coming. Sarah didn't sit. You fired me. Dr. Brennan suspended you, Hayes corrected. I'm reversing that decision effective immediately. Your personnel file has been amended. You're reinstated with full back pay. I didn't come for back pay. Then why did you come? Sarah's eyes swept the room. You sent me a job offer, Emergency Department Director. I want to know why. Hayes gestured to a chair. Please, sit. Sarah remained standing. Hayes sighed. Fine, I'll be direct. This hospital is hemorrhaging staff. 14 nurses have resigned in the past week. 6 doctors transferred to other facilities. Our reputation is in ruins. We need someone the staff trusts, someone the public respects. You need a symbol. We need a leader. Same thing. Dr. Vasquez spoke up, her voice rough. Commander, I've worked at Riverside for 3 decades. I've seen administrators come and go. I've watched this place slide from excellence to mediocrity because people like Brennan cared more about money than medicine. She leaned forward. You're the first person in 20 years who's actually given a damn about protecting patients. That's not symbolic. That's real. Sarah studied Vasquez's face. No manipulation there, just exhaustion. What happened to Brennan? Sarah asked. The lawyer cleared his throat. Dr. Brennan is currently under criminal investigation. Federal prosecutors are building a case for fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. How long until charges? Weeks, maybe months. These things take time. Not good enough. Hayes frowned. What do you mean? I mean, Brennan walked out of here after people almost died. He held a press conference and blamed me. He lied to the media, and now he's sitting in an interrogation room, probably cutting a deal. Sarah's voice was cold. That's not justice. That's bureaucracy. Commander, the legal system let Haldron Defense operate for 15 years. It let Brennan falsify records and take bribes. It let Laura Vance sell out her own hospital. Sarah's hands curled into fists. So, forgive me if I don't have faith in the process. The room was silent. Then Vasquez spoke. What would you do differently? I'd make sure everyone knows exactly what Brennan did. Not in legal filings that no one reads, not in sealed court documents, out in the open, where his colleagues have to face it, where his family has to hear it, where every hospital in the country knows what happens when you put profit over patients. Hayes and the lawyer exchanged glances. That's not something we can do, Hayes said carefully. There are legal implications. Then I'm not interested in your job offer. Sarah turned toward the door. Wait, Vasquez said. Sarah stopped. Vasquez stood slowly. What if we could? The lawyer's eyes widened. Dr. Vasquez, I strongly advise. I don't care about your advice. Vasquez looked at Sarah. What if we held an internal review? Made it public, televised. Let the staff testify. Let the patients speak. Let everyone see exactly what happened under Brennan's leadership. That would be a legal nightmare, the lawyer protested. So is the attack on this hospital, Vasquez shot back. So is the federal investigation. So is watching our staff quit because they don't trust us anymore. She turned to Hayes. We can either control the narrative or let it control us. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Do it. The lawyer stood abruptly. I'm formally objecting to this course of action. Noted, Hayes said. You're dismissed. The lawyer grabbed his briefcase and stormed out. Hayes looked at Sarah. We'll hold the review in 2 weeks. Full transparency. Every record, every complaint, every piece of evidence, and we'll live stream it. Why 2 weeks? Because we need time to prepare, and because you need time to heal. Hayes slid a folder across the table. This is the director position, full contract, full authority over the emergency department. You'll report directly to me and no one else. Sarah opened the folder. The salary was higher than she'd expected. The benefits were comprehensive, but what caught her eye was a single line near the end. Full discretion over staff discipline and departmental policy. I can fire anyone? Anyone in your department, yes. Including doctors? Including doctors. Sarah closed the folder. I'll take it, on one condition. What? I testify at the review, first, before anyone else. Hayes frowned. Why? Because if I'm going to lead this department, the staff needs to know I'm not hiding anything. They need to hear what happened in Kandahar. They need to know why I left the military. They need to understand who I am. Vasquez smiled slightly. You're going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. Good, Sarah said. Comfortable people don't change. The news broke that evening. Riverside General was holding a public review of Dr. Marcus Brennan's tenure. Live-streamed. Transparent. Unprecedented. The media went into a frenzy. Sarah's phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters, lawyers, military contacts she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored them all. Instead, she sat in her new apartment, a secured location Torres had arranged, and read through Brennan's personnel file. Every complaint, every disciplinary action, every warning that had been buried or ignored. There were dozens. A resident reported Brennan for berating her during a surgery. Dismissed. A nurse filed a complaint about unsafe working conditions. Dismissed. A patient's family accused him of negligence, settled quietly with an NDA. The pattern was clear. Brennan had been protected for years because he brought in money, because he published papers, because he made Riverside General look prestigious, and everyone had looked the other way. Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from Torres. Brennan's lawyer is trying to block the review, claiming it violates his rights. Judge will rule tomorrow. Sarah typed back. Will it work? Not if the hospital has good lawyers. Hayes brought in a firm from Seattle. They're not messing around. Sarah set the phone down and picked up another file. This one was hers. Her complete military record, declassified at her request. Everything she'd tried to bury for 3 years. The operations in Kandahar, the rescue missions, the 30 soldiers she'd been tasked to evacuate under enemy fire, the 3 who didn't make it. She read through the after-action reports, the debriefing transcripts, the commendations that felt like mockery. One paragraph stood out. Lieutenant Commander Mitchell displayed exceptional courage and tactical judgment under extreme duress. Despite inadequate intelligence and hostile fire, she successfully evacuated 27 critically wounded personnel. The 3 casualties were deemed unavoidable given the circumstances. Unavoidable. Sarah's jaw tightened. She'd spent 3 years telling herself that, trying to believe it. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw their faces. Private Jennings, 19, bleeding out from shrapnel wounds. Corporal Hayes, 23, trapped in a burning vehicle. Sergeant Morrison, 31, shot covering their retreat. 3 men who trusted her to get them home. 3 men who died because the intel was wrong, because command had sent them into a kill box, because someone higher up had decided their lives were acceptable losses. Sarah closed the file. Tomorrow, she'd have to talk about this, in front of cameras, in front of strangers, and she had no idea if she could do it without falling apart. Back. The courtroom was packed. Judge Patricia Kemp presided, her expression stern as Brennan's lawyer argued his case. Your Honor, this so-called review is nothing more than a public lynching. My client has not been charged with any crime. He has a right to due process. Your client had due process when the hospital board voted unanimously to terminate his employment, the hospital's attorney countered. This review is an internal matter. Dr. Brennan is free to decline participation. Decline? The lawyer's voice rose. And let his reputation be destroyed in absentia? Judge Kemp raised a hand. Enough. I've reviewed the hospital's proposal. The review will proceed as scheduled. Dr. Brennan may attend and present his defense, or he may abstain, but he cannot prevent the hospital from examining its own policies and personnel. Brennan's lawyer opened his mouth to object. That's final, Kemp said. Court adjourned. Sarah watched from the gallery as Brennan stood. He looked smaller than she remembered. His suit was rumpled. His face was pale and drawn. Their eyes met across the courtroom. For a moment, neither moved. Then Brennan looked away. The review was held in Riverside General's largest auditorium. 500 seats filled within an hour. Cameras lined the back wall. A panel of 3 independent medical professionals sat at the front. Experts brought in from Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, and Stanford. Sarah stood backstage, her hand shaking slightly. Her shoulder throbbed despite the painkillers she'd finally agreed to take. Dr. Vasquez appeared beside her. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. No one's going to think less of you if you back out. I will. Sarah took a breath. I spent 3 years running from my past. If I run now, I'll never stop. Vasquez squeezed her good shoulder gently. Then go show them who you really are. The panel moderator's voice echoed through the speakers. Our first witness is Commander Sarah Mitchell, current Director of Emergency Services. Sarah walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. The crowd was a dark mass beyond the glare. She sat at the witness table. A microphone was adjusted in front of her. The moderator, Dr. Ellen Park from Johns Hopkins, spoke first. Commander Mitchell, thank you for agreeing to testify. I understand you've waived your right to privacy regarding your military service. Yes. Can you explain why? Sarah's throat was tight. Because transparency matters. If I'm going to lead this department, people need to know who I am. All of it, not just the parts that look good on paper. Park nodded. Let's start with your time at Riverside. When did you begin working here? 18 months ago. And your initial position? Trauma nurse, emergency department. Were you qualified for a leadership role at that time? Yes, I had 12 years of military medical experience, combat trauma, mass casualty events, crisis management. Did you apply for a leadership position? No. Why not? Sarah paused. Because I was trying to be invisible. I didn't want attention. I didn't want responsibility. I just wanted to do the work and go home. What changed? The attack forced me to stop hiding. Park glanced at her notes. Let's talk about that night. When the armed contractors entered the trauma bay, you immediately identified them as hostile. How? Their movement patterns, their positioning, the way they scanned the room. I've seen mercenaries before. These men weren't federal agents. Did Dr. Brennan trust your assessment? No. What did he do? Sarah's voice remained steady. He suspended me, told me to turn in my badge and leave the hospital. A murmur went through the crowd. Park continued. What would have happened if you had left? People would have died. The contractors would have executed their target and probably killed any witnesses. But you didn't leave. No. Why? Sarah met Park's eyes. Because I took an oath to protect people, to do no harm. That oath doesn't end when someone suspends you. Park leaned forward. Commander, I need to ask about Kandahar, about the operation that ended your military career. Sarah's hands tightened on the table. I understand this is difficult, Park said quietly. But it's relevant to understanding your actions that night. Sarah nodded slowly. What do you want to know? Tell us what happened. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper at first, then grew stronger. We were tasked with evacuating 30 wounded soldiers from a forward operating base. Intel said the route was clear. It wasn't. We drove straight into an ambush. IEDs, RPGs. Sniper fire from elevated positions. The auditorium was completely silent. I had 30 men depending on me. Critical injuries, amputations, sucking chest wounds. Some were conscious, some weren't. All of them were dying. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. I had to choose who to load first, who could wait, who might not survive the trip. How did you make those decisions? Training, triage protocols, and hoping I was making the right call. How many did you save? 27. And the others? Sarah's eyes closed. Private Jennings bled out before we could reach him. Corporal Hayes was trapped in a vehicle that caught fire. Sergeant Morrison was shot covering our retreat. He died in my arms. Someone in the audience was crying. Commander Mitchell, Park said gently. The military ruled those deaths unavoidable. They gave you a commendation. Why did you leave? Because command called them acceptable losses. Sarah's voice turned hard. 3 men died because someone gave us bad intel. Because someone decided a mission was more important than verifying the intelligence. And when I asked for an investigation, I was told to stand down. So you resigned. I quit. There's a difference. What is it? Resigning is graceful. Quitting is angry. Sarah looked directly at the camera. I quit because I couldn't serve in a system that treated soldiers like numbers on a spreadsheet. And I came to Riverside hoping civilian medicine would be different. Was it? For a while. Until I realized it was the same system, just different uniforms. Park nodded slowly. Thank you, Commander. That took courage. Sarah stood. Her legs were shaking. She walked off stage into Vasquez's waiting arms. You did good, Vasquez whispered. Sarah couldn't speak. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her hollow. The moderator's voice echoed again. Our next witness is Dr. Marcus Brennan. Sarah turned to watch the screen backstage. Brennan walked to the witness table, his expression defiant. He sat down, adjusted the microphone, and cleared his throat. I want to make something very clear, he began. I dedicated 25 years to Riverside General. I built the emergency department into one of the best in the state. I trained hundreds of residents. I saved thousands of lives. Dr. Brennan, Park interrupted, we're not here to question your medical skills. We're here to examine your leadership decisions. My leadership decisions were sound. You suspended Commander Mitchell hours before an armed attack on your facility. She was insubordinate. She was correct. Brennan's face flushed. She had no authority to override my orders. Even when your orders were wrong? That's subjective. Park slid a document across the table. This is a complaint filed by Nurse Jessica Torres. She reported that you berated her during a trauma case, called her incompetent, and threatened to have her fired if she questioned your judgment. Do you remember this incident? I may have been frustrated. Do you remember it? Yes. Did you apologize? No. Why not? Because she needed to learn respect. Park pulled out another document. This is from Dr. Helen Vasquez. She reported that you altered patient records to hide a surgical error. Do you deny this? Brennan's jaw tightened. That was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that resulted in a patient receiving incorrect treatment for 3 days. The patient survived. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Brennan's voice rose. That I'm not perfect? That I made mistakes? Everyone in this room has made mistakes. Why am I being singled out? Because your mistakes had consequences, Park said coldly. Because you created a culture where staff were afraid to speak up, where patient safety came second to your ego, where someone like Commander Mitchell, a decorated combat medic, was treated like a subordinate who should know her place. Brennan stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, Dr. Brennan. This is a witch hunt. Sit down. Brennan remained standing. I refuse to be humiliated by people who weren't there, who don't understand the pressure, who've never had to make life or death decisions in real time. Sarah stepped onto the stage. The crowd gasped. You're right, Sarah said. You have made life or death decisions, and you chose wrong, repeatedly. Brennan turned to face her. You have no right. I have every right. I'm the director now, and I'm going to make sure what happened under your leadership never happens again. You? Brennan laughed bitterly. You're a nurse playing dress-up. You'll never have the respect of the medical community. Maybe not, Sarah said, but I'll have something more important. What's that? Their trust. Brennan's face twisted with rage. He looked like he was going to say something else, then thought better of it. He stormed off the stage. The auditorium erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Staff members argued. Cameras flashed. Park banged her gavel. Order! This review will continue tomorrow at 9 a.m. We're adjourned. Sarah walked backstage. Her phone was already ringing. Torres. Did you just publicly humiliate your former boss on live television? Torres asked. He humiliated himself. Fair point. Listen, something's happened. Brennan's lawyer just filed an emergency motion claiming you threatened his client. I didn't threaten anyone. I know. But they're arguing you used your position to intimidate him. They want you removed from the director position pending an investigation. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. Can they do that? They can try. Judge Kemp will hear arguments in the morning. This is ridiculous. This is how powerful people fight back. They can't win on merit, so they attack your legitimacy. Sarah leaned against the wall, exhaustion crashing over her. What do I do? Come to the courthouse tomorrow. Bring documentation of everything Brennan did, every complaint, every cover-up, every lie. We're going to bury him legally. And if that doesn't work? Torres was quiet for a moment. Then we find another way. Sarah hung up and closed her eyes. She'd thought taking the director position would give her control. Authority. A way to fix what was broken. Instead, it had painted a target on her back. And the people protecting Brennan weren't done yet. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Another message. Sarah opened it. A single photo. Dr. Vasquez. Walking to her car in the parking garage. A red laser dot visible on her back. Below the image, one line. Back down, or she's next. Sarah's blood went cold. She dialed Torres immediately. They're threatening Vasquez. When? Just now. Photo shows her in the parking garage. Sniper laser. Torres cursed. I'm sending a team to her location. Don't move. Stay where you are. I need to warn her. We'll handle it. If you leave that building, you become a target too. Sarah hung up and ran toward the parking garage anyway. She wasn't letting another person die because of her. The garage was 4 levels underground. Sarah took the stairs 3 at a time, her shoulders screaming in protest. She burst through the stairwell door onto level 3. Vasquez's car was parked near the elevator. Empty. Sarah's heart pounded. Where was she? Footsteps echoed from level 4. Sarah moved toward the sound, staying low, using parked cars for cover. She found Vasquez standing beside her car, her phone to her ear, completely oblivious to the danger. Sarah tackled her. They hit the concrete hard. Vasquez cried out. A gunshot cracked through the garage, the bullet sparking off metal where Vasquez's head had been a second earlier. Sarah dragged Vasquez behind a concrete pillar. Another shot, then another. The shooter was above them, probably on the roof access. Stay down, Sarah hissed. What the hell is happening? They're trying to kill you. Vasquez's face went white. Who? Whoever wants me to stop the review. More footsteps. Multiple sets. Coming from different directions. Sarah's mind raced. They were trapped. No weapon. No backup. 2 targets against an unknown number of shooters. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Loading dock. East exit. Black SUV. 30 seconds. Sarah stared at the message. It could be a trap. Or it could be their only way out. She grabbed Vasquez. Can you run? I'm 64, Shaw. Can you run? Yes. Then move. They sprinted toward the loading dock. Footsteps pounded behind them. Shouts echoed through the garage. The loading dock doors were closed. Sarah slammed into them with her good shoulder. They didn't budge. Vasquez grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and smashed the lock. The doors swung open. A black SUV sat idling 15 feet away, engine running. Sarah and Vasquez ran for it. The rear door flew open. Captain Reyes leaned out, his face still bruised. Get in. They dove inside. Reyes slammed the door. The driver floored it. Gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets punched through the rear window. Reyes shoved both women down. The SUV screamed out of the parking garage and onto the main road, weaving through traffic at dangerous speeds. Sarah finally sat up. "How did you know?" "Torres called me after you hung up, said you'd do something stupid." Reyes looked at her. "She was right. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We're not clear." The driver made a hard turn. Two black sedans were following them, closing fast. Reyes pulled a pistol from a holster. "Hold on." He rolled down the window and fired 3 shots. One of the pursuing vehicles swerved hard, clipping a parked car and spinning out. The second vehicle kept coming. The driver made another turn, this time into an underground tunnel. The pursuing car followed. Reyes aimed carefully and fired twice. The second vehicle's front tire exploded. It fishtailed wildly and crashed into the tunnel wall. They emerged into daylight. No more pursuit. The driver pulled into an abandoned warehouse district and stopped. Vasquez was shaking. "Who were those people?" "Haldron Defense," Sarah said. "Or what's left of them." "They tried to kill me because of the review?" "They tried to kill you to scare me, to make me back down." Vasquez's expression hardened. "Did it work?" Sarah met her eyes. "What do you think?" "I think you're going to finish what you started." "Damn right." Reyes stepped out of the vehicle and made a call. Sarah could hear him talking to Torres, giving their location, requesting a secure transport. Vasquez turned to Sarah. "Why did you save me?" "Because you stood up for me when no one else would." "That doesn't mean you owe me your life." "Maybe not. But I wasn't going to let them take yours." Vasquez was quiet for a moment. "My husband died 10 years ago. Cancer. I stayed at Riverside because the work mattered, because I thought I could make a difference." She looked at Sarah. "Then Brennan took over and everything changed. The hospital became a business instead of a mission, and I was too tired to fight him." "You're fighting now, because you showed me it's possible." Vasquez smiled slightly. "I'm too old for this, you know." "You ran pretty fast for 64. Adrenaline's a hell of a drug." Reyes climbed back into the SUV. "Torres is sending a team. They'll secure both of you until the trial." "How long?" Sarah asked. "As long as it takes." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." Sarah's phone buzzed again. She tensed, expecting another threat. Instead, it was a message from Margaret Hayes. The board voted. "We're moving forward with the review regardless of threats. Day 2 starts tomorrow at 9. Will you testify again?" Sarah typed back, "Yes." Hayes responded immediately. "Security will be tripled. Federal marshals will be present. We're not backing down." Sarah showed the message to Vasquez. "They're not going to stop," Vasquez said. "Neither are we." Day 2 of the review drew an even larger crowd. Metal detectors lined every entrance. Federal marshals stood at attention throughout the auditorium. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Sarah sat in the front row, her shoulders still bandaged, her expression grim. Dr. Park took the podium. "Yesterday's proceedings were interrupted by a security incident. Let me be clear, this review will continue. Anyone who attempts to interfere will face federal charges." The crowd murmured. "Our next witness is Laura Vance, former hospital director." 2 marshals escorted Laura into the room. She was still in handcuffs, still wearing an orange jumpsuit. Her eyes were red from crying. Laura sat at the witness table. Park didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Miss Vance, you've agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Tell us about your arrangement with Haldron Defense." Laura's voice was barely audible. "They approached me 2 years ago, offered me money to alter medical records related to their employees, industrial accidents, exposure to chemicals, anything that might create liability." "How much money?" $2 million, paid over 18 months. The crowd erupted. Park banged her gavel. "Did Dr. Brennan know about this arrangement?" Laura hesitated. "Miss Vance, you're under oath." "Yes, he knew." Brennan, sitting in the audience, shot to his feet. "That's a lie. Dr. Brennan, sit down or you'll be removed." "She's lying to save herself." 2 marshals moved toward him. Brennan sat down slowly, his face scarlet. Park turned back to Laura. "How did Dr. Brennan participate?" "He signed off on the altered records, made sure they passed internal review. He also received payments." How much? $500,000. The room exploded again. Reporters rushed toward the exits, calling their editors. Staff members shouted at Brennan. Cameras flashed incessantly. Park struggled to restore order. "We will have silence, or I will clear this room." The noise gradually subsided. Park continued. "Miss Vance, were there other hospital employees involved?" "Yes. 3 residents, 2 attending physicians, the head of medical records." "Are they in this room?" "2 of them." Park gestured to the marshals. "Identify them." Laura pointed. 2 doctors in the 3rd row went pale. "Take them into custody," Park ordered. The marshals moved quickly. The doctors were cuffed and escorted out while they protested loudly. Sarah watched all of this with cold satisfaction. The corruption was deeper than she'd thought, wider, more people implicated, and they were all going down. Park dismissed Laura and called the next witness. One by one, nurses and residents testified about Brennan's behavior. The intimidation, the retaliation, the culture of fear he'd created. A resident named Dr. Michael Porter broke down crying on the stand. "I tried to report him 3 times. Every time I was told to drop it, or I'd lose my residency. I had $200,000 in student loans. I couldn't risk it." "What did Dr. Brennan do when you questioned his judgment?" Park asked. "He humiliated me in front of the entire surgical team, called me incompetent, said I'd never be a real doctor." Porter wiped his eyes. "I almost quit medicine because of him." Sarah felt something shift in her chest. She'd known Brennan was cruel, but hearing the full scope of his destruction was different. How many careers had he ruined? How many people had he broken? The testimonies continued for 6 hours. By the end, Brennan sat alone in the back row, his face buried in his hands. No one sat near him. No one spoke to him. He'd become exactly what he deserved, invisible. Park adjourned for the day. Sarah stood to leave, but a hand caught her arm. It was Jessica, the young nurse from the attack. "Commander, can I talk to you?" "Of course." Jessica led her into a quiet hallway. "I want to testify tomorrow." "About what?" "About what you did that night. About how you saved my life. About how you protected everyone when Brennan ran and hid." Jessica's voice shook. "People need to hear the truth. Not just about him. About you." Sarah hesitated. "I don't need—" "Yes, you do. Because right now, there are people trying to discredit you, trying to make it seem like you're just as bad as Brennan. But you're not." Jessica met her eyes. "You're the reason I'm still a nurse. You're the reason I didn't quit, and I'm not the only one." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "Okay. Really? Really?" Jessica smiled through tears. "Thank you." Sarah walked outside into the fading daylight. Torres was waiting beside an unmarked car. "How'd it go?" Torres asked. "Brennan's finished. Half his staff is implicated. The hospital's going to be under federal oversight for years." "Good." They climbed into the car. Torres drove toward the safe house, taking a circuitous route to avoid tails. "You did it, Commander. You took down the entire system." "I didn't do it alone." "No, but you started it. You refused to look away." Torres glanced at her. "That takes guts." Sarah didn't respond. She was staring at her phone. Another message. Another unknown number. She opened it. A photo of a bank statement. Her name. An account she'd never opened. Deposits totaling $3 million. Below the image, "We tried to scare you. That didn't work. So now we destroy you. Tomorrow everyone will know you took bribes from Haldron Defense. Your career, your reputation, everything you fought for. Gone." Sarah's hand started shaking. Torres saw her expression. "What is it?" Sarah showed her the phone. Torres cursed violently. "That's not real. They fabricated it." "Doesn't matter. By the time anyone proves it's fake, the damage will be done." "We'll get ahead of it. Issue a statement. Prove the documents are forged. No one's going to believe that. Not after what happened with Laura Vance. Not after all the corruption we've exposed." Sarah's voice was hollow. "They're going to think I'm just another person who took the money." Torres pulled the car over and turned to face her. "Then we fight. We bring in forensic accountants. We trace the forgeries. We expose whoever created this. That takes time. The review ends tomorrow. Once this goes public, it's over." "So what are you going to do?" Sarah stared at the fabricated bank statement. at the evidence that would destroy everything she'd built. She thought about Kandahar, about the 3 soldiers she couldn't save. She thought about Riverside, about standing on that stage and admitting her failures. She thought about Brennan, sitting alone in that auditorium, abandoned by everyone. Then she made her decision. "I'm going to tell the truth," she said, "before they do." Torres blinked. "What?" "Tomorrow morning, first thing. I'm going to testify about this, show everyone the fake documents, explain exactly how they're trying to frame me, get it out in the open before they can weaponize it." "Commander, that's insane. You're giving them exactly what they want." "No, I'm taking away their power. They want me scared, silent, defensive. I'm going to be none of those things." Sarah's voice turned hard. "I'm going to walk into that auditorium and dare them to prove their lies." Torres stared at her for a long moment. Then she smiled. "You're absolutely crazy." "Probably. I love it." They drove to the safe house in silence. Sarah spent the night preparing her testimony, documenting every bank transaction she'd actually made, every account she actually owned. She called her bank, requested full records, alerted them to potential fraud. She contacted forensic specialists Torres recommended, set up a rush analysis of the fabricated documents. By 3 a.m., she had everything she needed. By 6 a.m., she was standing outside the auditorium, waiting for the doors to open. By 8:30, she was backstage, her notes in hand, her expression calm. Dr. Park found her. "Commander, I heard about the allegations. Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "We can postpone your testimony if you need time." "No, I'm testifying now, before the session officially starts." Park frowned. "That's not on the schedule." "Put it on." "Commander, I need 5 minutes, that's all. 5 minutes to address this before it becomes the story." Park studied her face, then nodded. 5 minutes. Sarah walked onto the stage. The auditorium was half full, people still filing in, journalists setting up cameras. She sat at the witness table and pulled out her phone, pulled up the fabricated bank statement. Then she projected it onto the main screen. The crowd went silent. "This image was sent to me last night," Sarah said, her voice echoing through the sound system. "It shows a bank account with $3 million. My name is on the account. The deposits allegedly came from Haldron Defense." Whispers rippled through the crowd. "It's fake," Sarah continued. "Every detail is fabricated, and I can prove it." She pulled up her actual bank statements, projected them side by side with the fake ones. Different routing numbers, different account formats, different dates. Whoever created this didn't bother to match the actual bank's protocols. Sarah's voice was steady. They were counting on people seeing the number and panicking, on me trying to hide it, on me looking guilty. She stood. "I'm not hiding, I'm not panicking, and I'm not guilty. I'm showing you exactly what they tried to do. Because that's what happens when you threaten powerful people. They don't fight fair, they fight dirty." The doors at the back of the auditorium burst open. FBI agents flooded in, moving with purpose. Agent Torres led them, her badge held high. "We have warrants for the arrest of Richard Caldwell and Stephen Pierce, both employed by Haldron Defense's financial division." 2 men in the front row tried to run. Agents tackled them before they reached the exits. The crowd erupted. Torres approached the stage. "Commander Mitchell, we traced the fabricated documents to these 2 individuals. They created the fake account yesterday using stolen identity credentials. We have the digital trail, the IP addresses, everything." Sarah looked at the 2 men being cuffed. "How'd you find them so fast?" "They got sloppy, used a company computer to create the forgeries." Torres smiled. "Amateurs." Dr. Park banged her gavel repeatedly. "Order! We will have order!" The chaos gradually subsided. Park turned to Sarah. "Commander, on behalf of this panel, I apologize. We should have provided better security." "You did fine," Sarah said. "They would have tried something regardless. At least now everyone knows what we're dealing with." She stepped down from the witness stand. The crowd parted as she walked through them. Some people reached out to touch her shoulder. Others simply stared. Brennan sat in his usual spot, his face ashen. He looked smaller somehow, defeated. Sarah stopped beside him. "You could have told the truth at any point," she said quietly. "You could have admitted your mistakes, apologized, changed, but you chose to protect yourself instead." Brennan didn't respond. "I hope it was worth it," Sarah said. She walked out of the auditorium into the morning sunlight. Reyes was waiting outside, leaning against a car. I heard what happened. You okay? Yeah. That was brave, stupid, but brave. Story of my life. Reyes chuckled. What now? Sarah looked back at the hospital, at the building where everything had started, where she'd tried to hide, where she'd been forced to fight. Now I actually do the job, she said. Fix the department, train the staff, make sure this never happens again. Sounds boring. Good. I could use boring. Her phone rang. Unknown number again. Sarah almost didn't answer. Then she changed her mind. Mitchell. A woman's voice. Calm, professional. Commander Mitchell, my name is Senator Elizabeth Harmon. I chair the Senate Committee on Healthcare Oversight. I'd like to speak with you about testifying before Congress. Sarah closed her eyes. About what? About hospital corruption. About how someone like Dr. Brennan was able to operate unchecked for so long. About what needs to change. A pause. The country needs to hear your story, Commander. All of it. I'm not interested in being famous. This isn't about fame. It's about fixing a broken system. And you're one of the few people who's actually fought it and won. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she saw movement near the hospital entrance. Jessica and 3 other nurses were walking out together, talking, laughing. Alive. Safe. Because Sarah had refused to back down. When do you need me? Sarah asked. 2 weeks. Washington, D.C. We'll handle all the arrangements. I'll be there. She hung up. Reyes raised an eyebrow. Congress? Apparently. You know they're going to grill you, make you relive everything, put your worst moments on national television. I know. And you're still going. Sarah thought about the 3 soldiers in Kandahar, about Brennan's victims, about every person who'd been silenced by a system that protected the powerful and abandoned the vulnerable. Yeah, she said, I'm going, because someone has to. Reyes nodded slowly. Then I'm coming with you. You don't have to. I know, but I'm going anyway. He opened the car door. Someone needs to make sure you don't punch a senator. Sarah almost smiled. Fair point. They climbed into the car. As they drove away from Riverside General, Sarah's phone buzzed one more time. She looked at the screen, a message from an unknown number. But this one was different. The review worked. Brennan's medical license was revoked this morning. He'll never practice medicine again. Thank you for not giving up. A grateful nurse, Sarah stared at the message for a long time. Then she closed her eyes and finally, for the first time in 3 years, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd done enough. Okay. But in a quiet office building across town, a man in an expensive suit watched the news coverage of Sarah Mitchell's testimony. He picked up his phone and dialed. She's more dangerous than we thought, he said. Testifying before Congress will give her a national platform. We can't allow that. A voice on the other end responded. The man listened, his expression unchanging. I don't care what it costs, he finally said. Sarah Mitchell needs to disappear before she reaches Washington, permanently. He hung up and turned back to the television. On screen, Sarah was walking out of Riverside General, surrounded by federal agents and supporters. The man smiled coldly. Enjoy your victory, Commander. It won't last long. The man hung up the phone and turned back to the television screen where Sarah Mitchell's face filled the frame. His smile was thin, calculated. Behind him, the office door opened. Sir, the contractors are ready. Good. Make it look like an accident, nothing traceable. And if she has protection, then make sure the protection dies with her. The door closed. The man returned to watching the news, already composing the statement he'd release after Sarah's tragic demise. A car accident, a gas leak, something believable. He didn't notice the red recording light blinking on his desk phone, or the FBI agent listening 3 floors below. Sarah stood in the parking lot of Riverside General, her phone still in her hand, the grateful nurse's message glowing on the screen. Reyes was saying something about security protocols for the trip to Washington, but his voice seemed distant. She was thinking about Brennan, about how small he'd looked in that auditorium, about how easy it had been to destroy him once people finally paid attention. Commander, are you listening? Sarah looked up. Sorry. What? Reyes sighed. I said Torres wants us back at the safe house. She's got new intel on Haldron Defense's remaining operations. More threats? Always. They climbed into the vehicle. The drive back was quiet, the city sliding past in a blur of gray buildings and afternoon light. Sarah's shoulder ached. She was tired in a way that sleep wouldn't fix. When they reached the safe house, Torres was waiting with 3 other agents and a laptop displaying surveillance footage. "We got him," Torres said without preamble. "Got who?" Torres turned the laptop screen. It showed a man in an expensive suit sitting in an office talking on the phone. The audio was crystal clear. "She's more dangerous than we thought. Testifying before Congress will give her a national platform. We can't allow that." Sarah's blood went cold. She watched the rest of the recording. The orders. The plan to kill her before Washington. "Who is he?" Sarah asked. "Victor Kelso, Executive Vice President of Haldron Defense. Harrington's boss. The man actually running the operation while Harrington took the fall." Torres paused. "He's been hidden for months. No public appearances. No testimony. Until now." "How'd you get this?" "We tapped his office after we arrested Harrington. Been waiting for him to make a move." Torres smiled grimly. "He just did." Reyes leaned forward. "This is enough to arrest him." "It's enough to destroy him," Torres corrected. "He just ordered a hit on a federal witness on tape. That's conspiracy to commit murder. He's done." Sarah watched the video again. Kelso's cold expression, his casual tone, like ordering someone's death was just another business transaction. "When do we move?" Sarah asked. "Now. FBI SWAT is mobilizing. We hit his location in 30 minutes. Torres looked at Sarah. "You should stay here." "Not a chance." "Commander Ipon, I want to see his face when you arrest him. I want him to know exactly who took him down." Torres and Reyes exchanged glances. "Fine," Torres said, "but you stay in the vehicle. No heroics." "Wouldn't dream of it." They moved out in a convoy of 4 SUVs, lights off, silent. Kelso's office was in a downtown high-rise, 32nd floor, surrounded by legitimate businesses that had no idea they were sharing a building with a criminal operation. The SWAT team moved first, clearing the lobby, securing the elevators. Sarah watched from the vehicle's monitor as tactical units swept through the building floor by floor. Then the radio crackled. "Target located, Office 3207, 4 armed security inside." Torres's voice was calm. "Rules of engagement? Non-lethal unless threatened. We want him alive." The assault lasted 43 seconds. Sarah watched it unfold through multiple camera feeds, body cams, hallway security, the SWAT team's helmet cams. Flashbangs, shouts, Kelso's security guards throwing down their weapons the moment they realized they were outgunned, and Kelso himself standing behind his desk, his expression finally showing something other than cold calculation. Fear. They brought him out in handcuffs 20 minutes later. Sarah watched from the SUV as agents escorted him past media cameras that had somehow already arrived. Kelso's eyes swept the crowd, then locked onto Sarah. He stopped walking. The agents tried to move him forward, but he resisted. "You," he said. His voice carried across the parking lot. "You think you've won?" Sarah stepped out of the vehicle. Torres grabbed her arm. "Don't." Sarah shook her off and walked toward Kelso. Reyes followed, his hand near his weapon. She stopped 5 feet away. "Yeah, I think I won." "This changes nothing. The system is bigger than one company, bigger than Haldron. There are a dozen operations just like ours, a dozen men just like me. You take one down, 2 more appear." "Maybe," Sarah said, "but you're still going to prison. Harrington's going to prison. Brennan lost everything. Laura Vance is facing 20 years, and every single person who enabled you is being exposed." "For what? A few years of bad headlines?" Kelso smiled. "I'll be out in 5 years with a plea deal. I'll retire somewhere warm, live off my offshore accounts. While you spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder." Sarah stepped closer. "You're right about one thing. There are more like you, more corruption, more systems designed to protect people like you and punish people like me." She paused. "But now everyone knows what to look for, because of this case, because of what you tried to do. Every hospital is reviewing their contracts. Every defense contractor is facing scrutiny. You didn't just lose. You became the example." Kelso's smile faded. "So yeah," Sarah continued, "you might get out eventually, but your company is destroyed, your reputation is dust, and your name is going to be used in ethics classes for the next 50 years as a case study in what not to do. She turned to Torres. Get him out of my sight. Torres nodded. The agents dragged Kelso toward a waiting transport vehicle. He shouted back at her, You're nothing, just a nurse who got lucky. Sarah didn't respond. She didn't need to. Because as the media cameras turned toward her, she realized something had changed. The reporters weren't shouting questions. They were waiting, respectfully. One finally spoke up. Commander Mitchell, do you have a statement? Sarah looked at the cameras, at the lenses broadcasting her face across the country. I'm not a hero, she said. I'm someone who refused to look away when things got hard, someone who couldn't live with staying silent. And if that makes me dangerous to people like Victor Kelso, then so be it. She walked back to the SUV. This time, no one tried to stop her. Detain. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Sarah testified before 3 different grand juries, gave depositions to federal prosecutors, reviewed evidence until her eyes burned. Brennan was formally charged with fraud, conspiracy, and endangering patients. His medical license was permanently revoked. His face was plastered across every news outlet as the embodiment of medical corruption. Laura Vance pleaded guilty to 23 counts. Her sentencing hearing was scheduled for next month. Harrington and Kelso both refused to cooperate, which meant they'd face the full weight of federal charges. Conspiracy, attempted murder, racketeering. Their trials would take years, but they'd already lost everything that mattered. Through it all, Sarah kept working. She returned to Riverside General as emergency department director and began the slow process of rebuilding trust. She fired 3 doctors who'd enabled Brennan, promoted 2 nurses to leadership positions, established new protocols for reporting abuse and corruption. It was exhausting work, frustrating. Some staff resented the changes, some resisted, but slowly things began to shift. On the morning she was scheduled to testify before Congress, Sarah stood in her apartment staring at her reflection. The sling was finally gone. Her shoulder was still stiff but functional. She wore a simple dark suit, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed, "Look at me." She looked like exactly what she was, someone who'd been through hell and came out the other side. Torres arrived to drive her to the airport. They didn't talk much during the ride. What was there to say? They both knew what was coming. The hearing would be televised. Senators would ask pointed questions. The media would dissect every word. Sarah's past would be laid bare for millions of people to judge. At the airport, Reyes was waiting with a security detail. Ready? No, Sarah said honestly, but I'm going anyway. They flew to Washington on a government plane. Sarah spent most of the flight reviewing her testimony, making notes, preparing for questions she knew would come. Captain Reyes sat across from her, reading a file. After a while, he looked up. Commander, can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you really doing this? You could walk away, take the director job, live quietly, but instead you're putting yourself in front of Congress. Why? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm tired of watching good people stay silent because they're scared. I'm tired of systems that protect predators and punish whistleblowers. I'm tired of being told that one person can't make a difference. She looked at him. So I'm going to stand up and say what needs to be said. And if it costs me everything, at least I'll know I tried. Reyes nodded slowly. That's a hell of a reason. It's the only one I've got. Tak. The Senate hearing room was enormous, ornate, designed to make witnesses feel small and insignificant. Sarah walked to the witness table and sat down. Behind her, the gallery was packed with reporters, hospital administrators, military veterans, and civilians who'd traveled from across the country just to watch. Senator Elizabeth Harman gavelled the hearing to order. This committee has convened to examine systemic failures in hospital oversight and the corporate corruption that enabled the attack on Riverside General Hospital. Our first witness is Commander Sarah Mitchell. Sarah raised her right hand and was sworn in. Harman leaned forward. Commander Mitchell, thank you for being here. Let's start with a simple question. What went wrong at Riverside General? Sarah took a breath. Everything. The leadership prioritized profit over patient safety. Staff who reported problems were silenced or fired. Complaints were buried. And when a decorated combat medic tried to warn people that something was wrong, she was suspended and humiliated. You're referring to yourself. Yes. Why didn't you go to authorities sooner? Because I'd already learned that authorities don't always listen. In the military, I reported bad intelligence that got 3 soldiers killed. I was told it was acceptable losses and to stand down. At Riverside, I reported safety concerns. I was told I was overdramatic. Sarah's voice hardened. The system punishes people who speak up. That's the problem. Senator Marcus Webb, a former hospital administrator, spoke next. Commander, with all due respect, hospitals are complex organizations. Sometimes difficult decisions have to be made. Sometimes good people make mistakes. Don't you think you're being unfair to Dr. Brennan? Sarah turned to face him. Senator, Dr. Brennan suspended me hours before an armed attack because I questioned his authority. He took bribes from a defense contractor. He altered patient records to hide medical errors. Those aren't mistakes. Those are crimes. But he also saved lives during his career. So did I. That doesn't excuse what he did. Sarah leaned forward. Senator, I've made mistakes. I've failed people. I live with that every day. But I never took a bribe. I never falsified records. I never put my ego above patient safety. There's a difference between imperfection and corruption. Webb sat back, his face flushed. Harmon took control again. Commander, what needs to change? Transparency. Protection for whistleblowers. Independent oversight that can't be bought. And consequences for people in power who abuse it. Sarah looked directly at the cameras. Because right now, the system protects the powerful and abandons everyone else. And that has to stop. The hearing continued for 3 hours. Senators asked about her military service, her medical training, her decisions during the attack. Sarah answered every question directly, without hesitation, without sugarcoating the ugly parts. When it was finally over, Harmon adjourned the session. Sarah stood, her legs shaking slightly. As she walked toward the exit, someone in the gallery started clapping. Then another person joined. Then another. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet, applauding. Reporters, veterans, hospital workers, even some of the senators. Sarah stopped, overwhelmed. She hadn't expected this, hadn't wanted it. But as she looked at the faces around her, people who'd been silenced, people who'd been hurt, people who'd been told their voices didn't matter, she understood. This wasn't about her. It was about all of them. Yeah, the response was immediate. Within 24 hours, Senator Harmon introduced legislation mandating independent oversight for all hospitals receiving federal funding. 3 more senators signed on as co-sponsors. Medical journals published Sarah's testimony in full. Ethics committees at major hospitals began reviewing their policies. Whistleblower protection organizations saw a surge in donations. And at Riverside General, applications for nursing positions tripled. Sarah returned to Portland 3 days later. She was exhausted. Her shoulder ached. She wanted nothing more than to sleep for a week. Instead, she went back to work. The emergency department was chaotic as always. Trauma patients, overdoses, cardiac arrests, the organized chaos of medicine at its most raw. But something was different. The staff looked at her with something new. Not fear, not resentment, trust. Dr. Vasquez found her during a quiet moment in the break room. You did good in Washington. I just told the truth. That's why it mattered. Vasquez poured 2 cups of coffee and handed one to Sarah. I've been thinking about your testimony, about what you said regarding protecting people who speak up. Yeah? I want to create a formal oversight committee. Staff representatives from every department, direct reporting to the board, no administrative interference. Vasquez looked at her. Would you help me build it? Sarah nodded. Yes. Good. Because we're not done fixing this place. Vasquez smiled. We're just getting started. 6 months later, Sarah stood in Riverside General's newly renovated emergency department. The walls were fresh. New equipment gleamed under LED lights. A plaque near the entrance read, "The Sarah Mitchell Emergency Care Center." She'd tried to stop them from naming it after her. Failed spectacularly. It's not about ego, Margaret Hayes had explained. It's about sending a message, about showing people that standing up matters, that integrity matters. Sarah still felt uncomfortable seeing her name on the wall, but she'd learned to live with it. The department had transformed over those 6 months. New protocols, new training programs, a whistleblower hotline that actually worked, And most importantly, a culture where speaking up was encouraged instead of punished. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was better. Jessica approached her, now wearing the badge of a charge nurse. "Commander, we've got a situation. Patient in Trauma 3 is getting aggressive. Security's on the way, but I'll handle it." Sarah walked to Trauma 3. Inside, a man in his 30s was shouting at a resident, his face red, his fists clenched. "I've been waiting 2 hours. I need pain medication now." The resident was backing away, her hands raised. "Sir, I understand you're frustrated, but I don't want excuses. Get me a real doctor." Sarah stepped into the room. "I'm the director. What's the problem?" The man turned to her. "Finally, someone in charge. This incompetent resident is doing her job correctly." Sarah interrupted. "She's following protocol. Pain medication requires assessment first." "I don't need assessment. You need to sit down and let us help you, or you need to leave." Sarah's voice was calm but absolute. "Your choice." The man stared at her. Something in her expression made him reconsider. He sat down slowly. "Thank you," Sarah said. She turned to the resident. "Dr. Hamilton, continue with your assessment. I'll stay if you need me." Hamilton nodded, her confidence returning. Sarah watched as the resident completed her examination, ordered appropriate tests, and prescribed medication based on the results. Textbook work. Exactly what Sarah wanted from her staff. When it was over, Hamilton approached her. "Thank you for backing me up. That's my job. Dr. Brennan would have thrown me under the bus." "I'm not Dr. Brennan," Hamilton smiled. "No, you're not." That evening, Sarah sat in her office reviewing patient reports when someone knocked on her door. "Come in." Captain Reyes entered, now wearing civilian clothes. He'd retired from active duty 2 months ago and taken a position as security consultant for Riverside's emergency services. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Sure." Reyes sat down. "I wanted to show you something." He pulled out his phone and opened a news article. "You've been nominated for the Presidential Medal of Freedom." Sarah stared at the screen. "What?" "The White House just announced it. You're being honored for your service in the military and your efforts to expose corruption in healthcare." Reyes looked at her. "Congratulations, Commander." Sarah didn't know what to say. The Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the country. "I don't want it," she finally said. "Too bad. You're getting it anyway." "Reyes?" "Commander, I know you don't like attention. I know you think you're just doing your job. But sometimes the world needs symbols. Sometimes people need to see someone stand up and fight and win. You're that symbol now." "I don't want to be a symbol." "Then be an example instead." Reyes stood. "Show people that one person really can make a difference, that speaking up matters, that fighting for what's right is worth it." He left before she could argue. Sarah sat alone in her office, staring at the article, at her own face looking back at her from the screen. She thought about Private Jennings, Corporal Hayes, Sergeant Morrison, the 3 soldiers she'd failed to save. She thought about Dr. Brennan, Laura Vance, Victor Kelso, all the people who'd chosen corruption over integrity. She thought about Jessica, Dr. Hamilton, the nurses and residents who'd found their voices because someone finally stood up for them. And she realized Reyes was right. This wasn't about her anymore. It never had been. The Medal of Freedom ceremony was held in the White House Rose Garden on a bright October morning. Sarah stood with 11 other recipients, scientists, activists, artists, educators, people who dedicated their lives to making the world better. She felt out of place among them. They'd spent decades building their legacies. She'd just been trying to survive. But when the president called her name and placed the medal around her neck, she understood something she'd been fighting against for 3 years. Survival wasn't enough. You had to stand for something, fight for something, be willing to lose everything for something. That's what separated existing from living. The president shook her hand. "Commander Mitchell, your courage inspired millions of people. Thank you for your service, all of it." Sarah nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. After the ceremony, reporters crowded around her. Cameras flashed, questions flew. "Commander Mitchell, what's next for you?" Sarah thought about that question, about Riverside General waiting for her back in Portland, about the staff who needed training, about the systems that still needed fixing. about the work that would never really be finished. "I'm going back to work," she said simply. "There's still a lot to do." "Will you run for office? Write a book? Start a foundation?" "No, I'm going to keep treating patients, keep training nurses, keep making sure that what happened at Riverside never happens anywhere else." Sarah looked directly at the camera. "Because that's where the real work is, not in ceremonies or headlines, in the day-to-day fight to protect people who can't protect themselves." One reporter pushed forward. "Do you have any message for people facing similar situations? People who see corruption but feel powerless to stop it?" Sarah paused. This was important. Maybe the most important thing she'd ever say. "Speak up," she said, "even when you're scared, even when people tell you you're wrong, even when the system is designed to silence you, because every major change in history started with one person refusing to stay quiet, one person deciding that the risk was worth it." She paused. "You might fail. You might lose everything. But staying silent guarantees nothing changes, and I'd rather fail trying than succeed at hiding." The reporters scribbled frantically. Sarah walked away before they could ask more questions. Reyes was waiting with the car. "That was a hell of a speech." "It wasn't a speech. It was the truth." "Same thing, coming from you." They drove through Washington, D.C., past monuments and museums and buildings where history was made. Sarah looked out the window thinking about everything that had led her to this moment. The 3 soldiers who died. The hospital that betrayed her. The attack that forced her to stop hiding. The trial that exposed the truth. The testimony that changed policy. All of it mattered. All of it had purpose. Even the failures. Especially the failures. Because failure taught you what you were really made of. And surviving failure taught you that you were stronger than you thought. "Where to?" Reyes asked. "Airport. I want to go home." "Portland or, Riverside General," Sarah said. "That's home now." Check. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the emergency department break room at 2 in the morning. The night shift was brutal. Multiple traumas, 2 cardiac arrests, a pediatric drowning that had taken everything the team had to revive. She was exhausted, covered in someone else's blood. Her shoulder ached from lifting a patient. Dr. Vasquez found her there, looking equally wrecked. "Hell of a night," Vasquez said. "They all are." "The kid's going to make it. Full recovery expected." Sarah nodded. That was something. Vasquez poured 2 cups of terrible break room coffee. "I've been thinking about something you said in Washington, about how the system protects the powerful." "Yeah?" "It occurred to me that we're part of that system now. Hospital directors, department heads, people with authority." Vasquez looked at her. "Which means we have a responsibility to make sure we don't become what we fought against." Sarah met her eyes. "Agreed. So I'm establishing a policy. Any staff member can request a meeting with me or you directly. No appointments needed, no administrative gatekeepers. Just walk in and talk." "That's going to be chaos." "Probably, but it's also accountability." Vasquez smiled. "We can't ask staff to trust us if we're not accessible." "Fair point." They drank their terrible coffee in comfortable silence. Then Jessica burst through the door. "Commander, we've got incoming mass casualty event, building collapse downtown. ETA 3 minutes. Sarah was already moving. "How many?" "At least 15, mix of critical and stable." "Get every available person to the trauma bays, call in off-duty staff, set up triage in the parking lot." "Already done," Sarah smiled. "Good." They ran toward the ambulance bay together. This was it. This was the work. Not ceremonies or medals or television appearances. This was saving lives when everyone else had given up. This was standing between patients and death. This was refusing to let chaos win. The ambulances arrived in a screaming convoy. Paramedics unloaded stretchers. Blood. Screaming. The organized chaos of mass trauma. Sarah moved through it all with practiced efficiency. Directing teams. Making triage decisions. Holding pressure on wounds while surgeons were located. She worked for 6 straight hours. By the time the last patient was stabilized, dawn was breaking over Portland. Sarah walked outside into the early morning light. Her entire body ached. Her hands were cramping, but everyone who'd come through those doors was alive. Dr. Hamilton joined her. "Commander, I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For showing me what leadership actually looks like. For teaching me that protecting patients means standing up to anyone, including other doctors. Sarah looked at the young resident, saw herself 6 years ago, full of idealism and hope and belief that medicine could save everyone. She didn't have that innocence anymore. But maybe that was okay, because innocence meant you didn't know the cost. And knowing the cost meant you understood what you were really fighting for. "You're going to be a good doctor," Sarah said. "Just promise me something." "What?" "When you see something wrong, speak up, even if it costs you, especially if it costs you." Sarah paused. "The world needs people willing to fight." Hamilton nodded. "I promise." Bokis. 6 months after that, Sarah received a letter. It was from Private Jennings's mother, the soldier who died in her arms in Kandahar. Sarah stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. "Dear Commander Mitchell, I've been following your story in the news. I wanted to reach out because I need you to know something that I should have told you 3 years ago. My son's death wasn't your fault. The intelligence failure wasn't your fault. You did everything humanly possible to save him. His last words, which the Army never shared with you, were, 'Tell the commander she's the bravest person I ever met. Tell her to keep fighting.' So I'm telling you now, stop blaming yourself for things you couldn't control. Honor my son's memory by being the person he believed you were. Keep fighting. Keep saving people. Keep refusing to look away. You're exactly the hero he said you were. With gratitude, Margaret Jennings." Sarah read the letter 3 times. Then she carefully folded it and placed it in her desk drawer next to her military commendations. She didn't cry. She'd done enough of that. Instead, she picked up her phone and called the training coordinator. "I want to expand our trauma protocols, add combat medicine techniques. Can we schedule a workshop?" "Absolutely. When?" "Next week. I'll lead it myself." She hung up and looked around her office, at the Medal of Freedom mounted on the wall, at the photos of her team, at the emergency department visible through her window. This was where she belonged. Not hiding, not running, not trying to be someone she wasn't, right here in the chaos, in the fight, in the impossible work of saving people who everyone else had written off. Because that's what heroes actually did. Not the flashy stuff, not the medal ceremonies. The daily, grinding, exhausting work of showing up and refusing to quit. 1 year after the attack, Riverside General held a memorial service. For the security guards who'd died, for the patients who'd been traumatized, for everyone who'd been affected by the violence. Sarah stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces. Staff, patients, family members, media. "A year ago, armed men entered this hospital planning to commit murder," she began. "They thought fear would make us weak, that chaos would make us helpless. They were wrong." She paused, because when everything fell apart, this hospital's staff did something extraordinary. They protected patients. They stood between innocent people and violence. They refused to abandon their posts. Sarah's voice strengthened. They proved that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to act despite it. She looked at the memorial wall where names were inscribed in bronze. The people we honored today didn't die because they were weak. They died because they were brave. Because they stood their ground, because they believed their lives meant something. Sarah turned back to the crowd. So we honor them by living the same way, by standing up, by speaking out, by refusing to let fear win. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, Sarah walked through the hospital one last time, past the trauma bays, past the ICU, past the break room where she'd once been mocked by staff who didn't understand her. Everything looked different now. Or maybe she was different. She'd stopped trying to be invisible, stopped apologizing for her past, stopped believing that staying small would keep her safe. Because safety was an illusion. The world was dangerous and chaotic and unfair. But that didn't mean you gave up. It meant you fought harder. Jessica caught up with her near the exit. "Commander, you have a visitor. Says it's important." Sarah followed her to the administrative wing. Inside her office, a woman in her 30s waited. She had kind eyes and nervous hands. "Commander Mitchell? I'm Dr. Amy Rodriguez. I'm a resident at Seattle Memorial. What can I do for you?" Rodriguez took a breath. "My chief of surgery is doing what Dr. Brennan did, falsifying records, taking bribes, creating a culture of fear. I've tried reporting it internally, but nothing's changed. She looked at Sarah with desperate hope. I saw your testimony. I read about what you did here. I need your help. Sarah felt something settle in her chest. Purpose. Direction. This was why she'd fought, why she'd exposed herself, why she'd refused to stay silent, so other people would find their courage too. Tell me everything, Sarah said. Rodriguez began to speak. Sarah listened, taking notes, already forming a plan, because the fight wasn't over. It would never be over. But that was okay, because Sarah Mitchell had finally figured out who she was supposed to be. Not a nurse who stayed invisible. Not a commander who carried guilt. Not a victim who let fear control her. She was someone who fought, someone who stood up, someone who looked at broken systems and said, not anymore. And that made all the difference. 5 years later, Sarah stood in a different Senate hearing room. This time she wasn't testifying. She was watching as Congress passed the Healthcare Whistleblower Protection Act, legislation directly inspired by her case. The bill guaranteed legal protection for medical professionals who reported corruption, created independent oversight boards, mandated transparency in hospital administration. It wouldn't solve everything. Laws never did, but it was a start. Senator Harmon found her afterward. You did this, Commander. None of this happens without you. I just told the truth. That's all it takes sometimes. Harmon smiled. What's next for you? Sarah thought about Riverside General, about the emergency department that now ran like a well-oiled machine, about the staff who trusted her, about the patients who lived because someone finally gave a damn. She thought about Dr. Rodriguez, whose hospital was now under federal investigation after Sarah had helped her file charges. She thought about the 23 other hospitals that had contacted her in the past 5 years, asking for guidance on fixing their own corrupt systems. I'm going to keep working, Sarah said. There's always another fight. And if you burn out? Sarah smiled. Then I'll rest. Then I'll get back up. That's how this works. She walked out of the Capitol building into the afternoon sunlight. Captain Reyes was waiting, gray now at the temples, but still solid as ever. Ready to go home? He asked. Yeah. They walked toward the car together. Sarah's phone buzzed. Another hospital administrator asking for advice. Another whistleblower looking for guidance. Another person who needed someone to tell them it was worth it to fight. She answered the call, because that's what she did now. She fought. Not with fists or weapons, with truth, with courage, with the stubborn refusal to let fear win. 3 soldiers had died in Kandahar. She couldn't save them, but she'd saved hundreds since then, maybe thousands, and every single one of them was proof that speaking up mattered, that standing up mattered, that one person refusing to stay silent could change everything. Sarah Mitchell had spent 3 years trying to be invisible. Now she was impossible to ignore, and she wouldn't have it any other way. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay quiet. Sometimes courage looks like standing up when everyone tells you to sit down. Sometimes justice is a long, exhausting fight that never really ends. But it's worth it, every single time.